Are we really going right now?
Yes, we're doing a number one, and if we're not careful, it might turn into a number two.
Oh, jeez.
We might shit ourselves. All right.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be the first time we shit the bed on the show.
No, it wouldn't.
God.
Guys, on Facebook Live, we are on Twitch Live, and we are on our Realm of the Mist YouTube channel live. Yes, I set that one up while I was waiting. So, guys, welcome to Surviving the Storm with your host, Mr. Christopher Rutter. It's not my show.
Guys?
Not my show.
Hey, what's going on?
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Dick Togo, a.k.a. the Blue Meanie, a.k.a. Big Dick the Destroyer.
Oh, Christ, we're doing this type of shit again?
Oh, Jesus.
There was some new AKAs in that lineup. And
Those are all pro wrestlers, just as a note.
Okay, then. I can appreciate that. Before we go too far off the rails, UA Blackwing checking in. Was supposed to be doing 2 other podcasts in the last couple of days, but the main host of one and my co-host on the other lost his voice, so that you'll get those eventually, Chris. I promise. We just need Zephyr to be able to talk again.
Wait, we were supposed to do a Press A Gaming?
Well, we were discussing doing a Press A Gaming, but it was all up in the air on whether or not he was able to talk, and, well, apparently after the last after hours, that went bye-bye. Oh,
that's wonderful. Well, just to let you guys know, I shared it out to Mr. Chris Rutter's page, What's Your Effin' Bidge. I shared it out to Realm of the Mist, fans of Realm of the Mist page. I've shared it out to SJ Network and Promote Your Podcast. So people can find us on any one of those, and of course you can find it on my page, Christopher Michael Stolle, or you could go to YouTube or Twitch or what we just discussed, Facebook Live. I don't know. What are we talking about today? I'm an idiot.
Well, we've got a lot of time under our belts now with being in the quarantine, so I don't know if anybody's getting into any good habits or if the habits are falling apart at the seams.
Actually, I just received
surviving this kind of.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, bro.
I actually got a call from my job. I'm being pulled back on Monday.
Oh, so you're considered essential.
I'm considered outdoor.
Are you?
Oh, okay.
They finally decided that fence installing is kind of like landscaping, and in which case we're not in any danger. So I am actually being recalled Monday. Yay!
Well, that makes sense.
Okay. Good for you.
Well,
Congratulations.
You get to go back to work, man. That's cool.
Well, I'll tell you,
I'm in the bartending industry, which means I'm unemployed until all of this is over with.
I'm in the hospitality industry, so I'm in a very weird place because my employers are actually the Seneca Nation, and we don't have to abide by the rules, but we choose to.
Well, again,
I'm with transportation railroad, so I'm essential.
Damn right you are.
That was one of the things I thought we could discuss. Was the classification of essential to non-essential, because it does seem very, very weird to me. Like, for example, my wife works for Dollar Tree. You would not think Dollar Tree is an essential thing. I know they serve some foods and some cleaning supplies, but they're not like a Walmart or a chain supermarket. It's amazing to me that a dollar store is remaining open.
You think your wife can give me a discount?
A discount at a fucking dollar store? How ghetto are you?
Simple. He won't shop at the dollar store. He will shop at the 99-cent store.
Goddamn right.
How much for one rib?
It builds up.
That's horrible.
I'm sorry, I had to say something retarded. I'm
I'll admit it, man. You caught me completely off guard with that. Like a discount at the dollar store. Really?
I need my 20% off, yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Hey, yo, we gotta laugh throughout all this shit too.
We do, and
Absolutely.
Straight up.
And I'm gonna be nicer to Anthony because I did lay into him on the last After Hours, which was funny as shit. But I know I got him a little hot under the collar.
Damn it! You with that fucking topic. I was like, here we go again. He always does this shit to me.
Well, no. The last episode, UA will attest to it. Last episode was supposed to be a celebrity style roast where you were the guest of honor. The problem is I'm the only one that remembered that was supposed to happen.
Yeah.
And I was going to let it go until I made that little comment just to be a dick, and you took heart to it, and I said, "Oh, I'm working this."
your pro wrestling skill kicked in of being the heel of, oh, wait a minute, I just touched a nerve. Let's see how hard I can press it.
I should have known I was working with fucking Jake the Snake here.
Dude, I was a master back when I was a heel in pro wrestling. I was a master. I used to have to get walked out of arenas by security because people were waiting for me in the parking lot.
Oh, now that's the sign of a
Okay, that's some
good
scary shit right there.
worker right there.
Well, one of the best ones was a biker group.
Good-ass heel, man.
And one of the groups was a fucking biker gang. Never piss off the bikers.
No.
Yeah, that's a tough crowd to mix in with. So do we have 4 people on the show right now that have past experience in pro wrestling?
No experience, just an avid fan and enjoyer of.
Okay.
I mean, for me, it's more of I've been a fan since '95. I've been to a lot of indie shows. I've actually never been to a WWE show though.
I have, and it is unlike anything you will ever see.
Indies are better.
I heard it.
So is
it looks like indies are better though. I ain't gonna even sit here in front for what I've heard and looked at. I mean, it's just like it's too many damn people. You can't really get any intimacy with the wrestlers.
okay, so it's just the 2 Chris's who have actually worked as hands. Is that the deal?
Wait, you've worked in the indie circuit?
Yes, I did.
What did you do? This is news to me. I don't know you, so
Yeah. So back in the early '90s, I went through school with Dutch Mantell and worked in the southern Indiana area. And it was quickly discovered that I was not nearly as good a hand as I should have been. I was too quick to shoot on people. So I quickly made the move over to doing hook and shoots and fighting for real because working in the ring, I was not nearly... I got onboarded as being one of the boys. I worked backstage a lot, did a lot of running and everything. I worked some matches, but I was much better as a shooter than I was as working as a hand in the ring. So, but yes, I do have experience on the circuit.
nice. Did you get far enough to get your gimmick? Like, who were you?
No, I didn't get a gimmick over. I had 7 different names given to me over the course of 9 months.
None of them flattering, I'm sure.
Yeah, none of them any better than the last. The best one that they were able to come up with, and this was in '94. And I mean, you have to understand that, you know, I'm at the time I'm like 6'1", 260, and I shaved my head bald, and this is before Stone Cold or Goldberg.
Right.
And my favorite wrestler was Shawn Michaels. So my gimmick was Christopher Michaels. I came in as the hard ass in all black boots and black trunks with a shaved head, but I did a lot of high spots at the same time. So it was a weird combination, and they didn't really know what to do with me. And anytime somebody threw a tater, it got real fast. So I was not looked at as being very welcome in the ring after about 11 months was the extent of it. After that, I went straight into hook and shoot exclusively, where I got to actually really throw for real. That's what I was more geared towards. That's what my personality was more based around. I wasn't acclimated enough with the business. I love the business, obviously, but I wasn't acclimated with the behind-the-scenes politics and everything that goes on to really work well in the ring. So, it ended up working out for the best. I was never going to be a good hand, as it were. So, it is what it is.
That's kind of funny. I might have to share my story of breaking into the business as well. But what's ironic is your gimmick name was Christopher Michaels, and you were based on Shawn Michaels. Huge Shawn Michaels fan. Shawn and Brett were the idols that I modeled my career after.
Absolutely.
I spent 17 years in the business, but when I was first breaking in, they wanted me to be Chris Jericho's little cousin. I was supposed to be Matt Jericho.
So were you working in the Northeast then at that point, right?
Oh, I worked everywhere from New York to Florida and from Jersey to Colorado.
Okay.
I've been all around. I've worked for BBOW. I've worked for. I've done a couple dark matches for ECW. I've worked for many locals like Jersey All Pro and.
Okay.
I've been around. Like I was trained by the.
I
was trained by the Pitbulls.
Claim is, nowhere near yours, but my biggest claim is I did get to work some dark ECWs. I worked with the Sandman and I worked with Sabu. I worked with Brian Christopher in a couple tag matches.
Oh, nice.
And my friend here in Southern Indiana, Eric Atkers, we were great friends from middle school on, and his family owned the Evansville Coliseum, which is big with Mid-South or, Jerry Lawler's USWA promotion, and they started the CCW, and Eric really wanted to put me over in the biggest way because I had the right look at the time, and I had the right kind of hard edge and everything, and he really wanted to put me over, but working those matches with Sandman and Sabu especially, we had a lot of fun. And going through Dutch's school, which at that point in time, this is 1992, was learning the ropes and being pushed out to the ring for your first work, was running the ropes, knowing how to take your back falls, knowing how to hip toss, and that was about it. You got thrown into your first work at that point in time. And it just wasn't, if I would have had like another 6 months of like the Powerhouse or, like what the ECW had going later in the 90s, or even going down to Jerry's area in the USWA, I probably would have been a lot better of a worker. But the way Dutch did it was, just take some bumps and get out there and learn your way through it, which is the way they did it in the 60s or 70s. It just wasn't a good fit for me at the time. I had a lot of fun, and I stayed in the industry for a while doing promoting and whatnot. But, that was I was a much better shooter than I was a hand in the ring. That's for sure.
Well, that's actually kind of ironic because I was trained by the Pitbulls, Gary Wolf and Anthony Sorelli.
Outstanding! Yeah,
and their training was not too dissimilar. I spent 6 months getting my ass kicked, learning how to take the bumps and run the ropes. And when I got my first match, I swear to God, I spent a year counting the ceiling. But really, what I was doing was spending, counting the lights on the ceiling. But really, what I was doing for that whole entire year was actually learning the craft. I don't think you learn the craft in training. You learn it out with opponents.
I didn't get that opportunity being put into the right spots. So, back in those days, well, you can't say back in those days, but
well, yes, I can. I broke in '97, so it's still 20 years.
All right. Yeah, and I was 92, 93. And at that time, there was a lot of jealousy backstage. If you came in with the right body, everybody tried doing everything to keep you down. They didn't want to do anything to put you over. And obviously, I didn't have the chops or the time in the ring to actually get myself to that spot. And I became really resentful really quick because my boy was the promoter. And anywhere I went outside of the area to work matches to get some seasoning, I was not in the back pocket of the promoter at the time, so I really got put through a lot of bullshit, and I wasn't prepared for it, and I didn't get the right knowledge put on me. And looking back on it, I missed a really big opportunity, but at the same time, I enjoyed my time doing the hook and shoots and the UFC fighting way more than I probably would have at that time. So it is what it is. But yeah, I broke in and I got to be one of the boys backstage locally, not on a national. I wasn't able to go territory to territory and do anything, but here locally, I was able to do some work, and it was fun. And it's a cool feather to have in your cap to say that you did that and worked with Dutch and all that shit. But it is what it is. But it was fun, that's for sure. I just approached it the wrong way and didn't have the right knowledge put on me breaking in.
Well, that's kind of funny because I had something very similar to my career, and I kind of powered my way through my career just to spite people who said that I wasn't, I would never amount to anything. I was too skinny. I could bump really well. That's one thing nobody ever said against me, is that this kid can bump. But as far as
that's a big thing, being able to take the bumps and be able to get up is a big deal.
Exactly. But I was never big enough. I would never get a big enough push. I would never be a main eventer, whatever. And it used to piss me off, and it actually determined me to go that much farther, like saying I would never get out of the local circuits in Philadelphia, like GWA, PWA, where I started.
Did you ever come through OBW? Did you ever come through Ohio Valley?
No, I wanted to so bad, but I never got the opportunity.
One of the biggest things that ever happened was being able to spend my one and only 10 minutes with Corny in the business. And have him come at me, look, kid, you're fucking up, and here's what you need to do whenever you take that bump, and you know how Corny is.
Yeah.
Seeing him off camera and doing everything. But, I think he kind of took a little bit of a shine to me. I'm sure he doesn't remember me, shit from Shinola at this point 25 years ago. But
you might be surprised. He's got a long memory.
Yeah, he has a great memory. He really does. It's amazing. But because I've heard him talk about a couple of cards that I was on, even though mine were, prelim or dark matches at the point in time. But being able to work a couple darks in the OVW, the one match I had with Brian Christopher, then the other one I had with Sandman and Sabu.
Wait, hold up. Back the oh, wait, Brian Christopher. Okay, yeah.
Sandman, you worked with Sandman and Sabu?
Yeah.
I did work in a tornado match with them. Yes.
You have no idea how goddamn jealous I am of y'all right now.
Well, I'm thinking about the 3 dark matches. I'm thinking about the 3 dark matches I ever did, and you're lucky you got to work with Sandman and Sabu. I got to get my ass handed to me by Tajiri, by Little Guido, and by fucking Shane Douglas. And when I say my ass handed to me, my dark matches were 30-second squashes.
Oh God, you got kicked by Tajiri.
Wait.
Shane was he was very famous for doing the 30-second squash.
Yes, he was.
He was horrible to all new talent.
But I'll tell you what, Tajiri was the worst. Tajiri was the worst because, like you saying, really? Like you potato, it becomes real. Tajiri does not pull those fucking kicks like in any way, shape, or form.
Right. and that was my instant downfall.
That's the
with all the
strong
boys.
style.
He was doing strong style before it was called strong style, but. Just the ability to be able to take some of those taters from those guys. I have a big scar across the top of my head from the stop sign I took in the Sandman and Sabu tornado match. I was supposed to be outside of the ring and brought in for one bump, and it ended up I got a tater thrown at me by Sandman. And so we got real close in the clinch real fucking quick. He got me out of the ring. He said, "Okay, kid, that's it for you," and put me out. And then whenever I got outside of the ring, I got a stop sign put over my head by Brian Christopher, which was a double turn because I came out with Christopher. And but at that point in time in CCW, there was no real TV, so a double turn didn't fucking mean anything. So it was really lost on the crowd. I just took a really bad shot to the head with a stop sign, and I still have a scar across the top of my head from it. That's about the only shine I got from everything that I did.
I got a story for you, but before we do, I feel we've been kind of like excluding UA and Anthony in this, so I've got a question to throw out to everybody here. Since I know everybody here has either been involved in the wrestling business in some way, shape, or form, or at least have been a fan of the wrestling business, I think we got a topic of conversation to be able to discuss that doesn't have to do with coronavirus. And that is the current state of professional wrestling. Like, The best.
Before we do that, okay, would you rather take a kick from Tajiri, or would you rather take a kick from Great Muta?
I would rather take it from Tajiri because Great Muta would fucking go through you.
I would
mean,
say
he did train Tajiri.
I would say Muta because I've never taken Mutas.
If you're in the spot that I was in, Muta was going to fold you. And but I never got the chance to work with anybody like Tajiri, so I don't know. But I think I would rather work with Muta than Tajiri.
Well, that's
here.
Muta is the teacher.
Yeah,
I'm gonna one up Anthony real quickly. Would you?
I just have to think about that because I'm just thinking to myself. Either way, I'm gonna die.
Yeah, either way, you're going to get folded. I promise you.
Would you rather take the kick from Tajiri, or would you rather take a Singapore cane shot?
That is actually one of my favorites.
I will one up over both of you. I would rather take both the Singapore cane shot from Sandman and the Tajiri kick over one more Harley race chop.
Oh,
did you take a shot from Harley?
I took
Harley race chop you.
I got put into a battle royal with Harley, and I was very skinny. It was in PWA. I was very skinny, greenhorn, but I was supposed to be a cruiserweight high flyer. So, we're getting set up for the thing, and he's slapping his hand against the wall, toughening up the skin on his hand. And I said, "What are you doing?" He says, "Well, you like to do flips. I like to do chops." Well, during the course of the battle royal, he got me in a corner, and he lit me up with about 7 shots before just dumping me over the top.
How many blisters did you have after that was over with? Because Flair talks about how bad the heart, because that's the reason he uses the chops, is because of all the time he spent in the ring with Harley and Kim Patera and all those guys. But I mean, taking a chop from Harley, goddamn, that's he's hitting you with blocks of cinder.
Well, let's put it this way: for the longest time, the joke was I'm a colored person because I changed about 7 different colors in 2 months.
Fuck yeah, you did.
I bet you did. Harley Race got them big old meat cleaver hands of his.
Dude, the first one felt like it collapsed my rib cage.
Yeah, Harley is. I only saw him backstage twice. I never got to even come close to being anywhere around any of the work that he was doing. But I mean, he could definitely put 3 walnuts between his 4 fingers and probably crush them shaking someone's hand. That dude's hand is incredibly strong.
Man, he came from that area where all the wrestlers were superhumans.
But
so, anyways, what was the question that you had for us, Chris?
All I gotta say is Harley Race is definitely still the man in my heart. It's sad that he's not with us anymore.
He definitely is one of the truest badasses to walk in between the ropes. As far as people who could really put a hurting on you, whether it was a work or not, Harley was definitely one of the top 10. Kim Patera was notoriously bad as well, but Harley, because he was able to run and work and do the flips off the ropes and everything, he was able to work a match both aerobically and able to really put hands on you and just with a grip hurt you. And that's something that I think a lot of these new school guys lack. They don't have that.
Well, but
I was talking to Nikita Breznikov about that. He was talking about, back in the day, it's just that, the kayfabe was...
Yeah, and this is kayfabe days. Yeah, definitely.
And so Nikita was telling me, back in the day, though, they still had to make that shit look real. So, they were...
Yeah, they were very close to the vest. Very.
Yeah, it was... You were basically going against superhumans, man.
And whenever I was breaking in, and this is just a few years before you, Chris, I guess, if you broke in '97, whenever I was breaking in, not only was kayfabe still a very big deal, it was almost a religion, but a lot of the guys worked so close to the vest that if you didn't come out of there hurt, you didn't work a good match. And it was an honor badge to come out the next night, because a lot of these guys worked 8, 9 shows a week, especially if they were good enough to be TV talent.
Right.
Back in those days, if you weren't working injured, you weren't really one of the boys. You were never brought in the locker room as being over with the guys if you weren't working hurt. And all of those guys worked 300 days a year, hurt in some form or fashion. and Harley is he put a lot of people through it, and he came from a much older generation, from the 50s and 60s guys, and then through the 70s, and putting guys over in the 80s and 90s, obviously with Dusty and Ric Flair and Dory and Terry Funk and all of those guys. I mean, he's like a cross bridge to 7 decades of wrestlers, and he's kind of that intermediary of being in the middle of carrying on old traditions and passing it on to the newer guys. And I think in a lot of instances, especially in the show, if you go to the WWE, you're in the show, and I think a lot of that is lost.
Well,
if we're talking about the current state of wrestling.
You're not wrong, but I think it's also the mentality, because I could definitely tell some stories of some locker rooms where I considered it a cancer, even though in a sense I was kind of part of that generation, was the rise of the cruiserweight and the more realistic and less, I don't want to use the term comic bookish, but larger than life gimmicks. During the whole transition from like the Hogan era to the Attitude era, if you will, if I'm using mainstream.
Going from
all the way to John Cena.
No, fuck John Cena. But I've heard the stories. I've heard the stories about like when the old school wrestlers, like the Ric Flairs and the Arn Andersons, when they broke into the business, your tryout. I remember my tryout was to see if I had enough gumption to come back after being embarrassed and having the shit kicked out of me. But that's all it was. Most tryouts back in the day,
they want to see if you came back.
Right. But back in the day, they'd break a fucking body part and see if you come back. They would literally break your leg. Yeah, they would literally break your leg and see if you would come back, had the heart to come back.
That's what happened with Hulk Hogan with Matsuma. Was it Matsuma? Anyways, he broke his calf and ankle, and they were like, okay, well, let's see if the big guy can come back. So it's a different thing nowadays, I think.
Yeah, it is.
But the big thing that I noticed changes in that bothered me was like we were talking about kayfabe and telling stories in the ring. The way I was trained was you call on the fly. Like when you go in. Now I know I'm not spoiling anything. People know that fucking wrestling's predetermined nowadays. Back when I was in the business, like Chris attests to this, we still held on to kayfabe. Like, no, fuck you, it's real. You don't believe me? Get in the ring. But I mean, you know,
if you want to say something, I'll punch your fucking lights out. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, well, shoot, back in those days, man, shoot, you got caught with like who somebody's supposed to be feuding with or something like that. Your ass got fired.
Exactly.
Well, and whenever I was coming in was whenever they were doing the work with the crowd gimmicks that ECW made really famous. But it was bring golf clubs, bring light bulbs, and there's a lot of not faking that.
Mm-hmm.
And even though you were conditioned to be able to take bumps, especially if the weapon got in the hand of another worker, then you were definitely able to, okay, let's take a second here and figure out how we're going to work this. But whenever fans bring shit to the game, then it's a whole different gimmick, I guess, is the right way to put it. But that only happened during the 90s. So we're part of a generation that came through, you and me, Chris. We're part of a generation that came through with workers that wasn't seen before and hasn't been seen since.
Well, that's where I was going with it. Was there was a lot of people that were up and coming. Like once I was already starting to be established, as I crossed that threshold of no longer green, but I'm not necessarily a veteran yet. Right. And I'm in that era, and I'm starting to see the new up and comers, and like gimmicks are being dropped. These people are coming in and fucking like pretending they're UFC fighters in shorts, and so they were pulling the who the fuck Ken Shamrock looks.
Ken Shamrock.
Ken Shamrock did that to a lot of wrestlers at that time.
Right, but that was
he really put a bad spot on the business actually, because it took about 5 years to wash that off.
And unfortunately, the people that were coming in, they were talented as all hell. The kids that were coming in, but they had no gimmick, no personalities in the ring, and they They lost kayfabe. Like, you're in the ring, you're supposed to tell a story, whether it's on the fly or you're calling the whole entire match beforehand. Whatever the case may be, there should be a story. If you're doing a spot and that spot does damage to a certain body part, sell that fucking body part, right?
Yeah, you have to work it for the whole 15 minutes you're in. Yeah.
Well, these kids believe that everything should be a fucking high spot, and they sold none of it.
No, yeah. You're working too hard on the high spots, and you're calling, 6 high spots in a 15-minute match, and it's like you barely needed the one.
Oh,
Why
guys, not to interrupt, but I do have to acknowledge this. We've got a couple people watching, but the one that just came in, Mr. Tito Santana, is actually watching us, guys. So, arriba!
Oh, damn.
Arriba! So, just wanted to give him a shout-out. So, I'm sorry, continue.
Yeah,
shout out, Mr. Santana. What's up?
Definitely, man. Tito, a Hall of Fame legend, man. That definitely. But whenever you're working some of these matches and you see, these 3 or 4 high spots that are being called, not so much on the fly, they've actually, pre-worked them, and then they continue to go from one to the next, and they don't understand the psychology that goes into, okay, whenever I'm getting ready to take this bump, I need to turn left. Whenever I get up, I need to take right to face the crowd, and then I need to go to another left to be able to come off, have him hit me coming off the ropes. This is lost so much with these guys nowadays. It really is.
Well, I think it also comes down to the training too, because I remember when I was training, and again, we're in that strange world where we were the last of the old, but the beginning of the new. And I remember them training us, and even though, like, in GWA there was no cameras, we were being trained to sell to the camera. Like, we weren't being trained to sell to the crowd, we were told that we were trained to sell to the camera. And I always thought that was weird, because in the independent circuit, not a lot of people do camera shows, even if they're recording for a DVD.
Yeah, there's no camera activity in 7 out of 10 shows you do.
Right, so you got to my mentality, and when I became a trainer for Rocky Mountain Championship Wrestling, I told them, don't even worry about the camera. The people you need to worry about is in the front row.
Well, one of the things that Dutch really drilled in the 3 months that I went through school with him was, don't worry so much about where the camera spot is supposed to be. You're looking at front right center. You want to sell the match to the guy who's in upper deck 12, seat 7. The guy who's way up looking down, that's who you want to sell the show to. And if you could sit close to the vest with him, then you could definitely work on camera no matter where you go.
No, you're not wrong, but the reason I was saying sell to the front row was making sure that you covered your spot calls and everything else, because they were the eyes that could see you the best. You know what I mean?
Right. Or they could even hear the calls in some instances. I was in a couple of matches where they could hear the calls, and I always liked to stomp whenever the calls were going on. And I had one guy from the front row actually tell me, he said, throw to the ropes and fucking flip me.
I had a match, I'm not going to lie, I had a match that was a complete clusterfuck. It was in Ramblers Rec Center in Philadelphia. It was me and a makeshift tag team partner taking on TV Generation, which was a great comedy tag team. But it was just a shit match, and like, we had Hat Guy in the crowd from ECW fame. He's a heat bringer. Yeah. And to this day, I'll never forget what I heard screamed out, because the crowd was quiet because the match was just garbage. And it'll put into perspective, like, about what time it was that this happened, because all I hear is Hat Guy. All you hear is Hat Guy, as loud as could be, turn around and yell, "Matches like this is why Bischoff got fired."
Oh, he ain't shit for that. Oh,
that's awesome.
Oh, we were fucking hurting, but you mentioned, like, you're a Shawn Michaels fan, and it's funny when you say the fans hear the calls. Shawn was famous for that, because Shawn was the type of guy, if he was calling something and nobody heard it or they didn't do it right, he would call it, he would scream it out clear as day, didn't care who fucking heard it. It actually became part of his gimmick, where he'd grab you by the arm and be like, "Arm drag!" As the top row of the arena could hear it.
Yeah, that sounds like was something that HBK would do.
Yeah. But the question I was going to present to you guys, so that way it's a little less like inclusive for Chris and I, and more inclusive to everybody who's ever been a fan of pro wrestling, is
you freaking nerds.
The current state of the business. Like, to give an example, when I stopped wrestling, I kind of stopped watching wrestling because it just, not just the fact that I know the inner workings, so it doesn't have the entertainment value, but I think although the talent has the in-ring ability, there's no charisma, there's no personalities, there's no stories. I think wrestling's lost in today's generation as far as mainstream's concerned. I'm excluding independent circuits in my question.
Yeah, I think.
I mean, I would have to defend like AEW. I feel like their promos are bringing something important back, where it's just like you're not just focusing on one guy, like another certain promotion that shall be unnamed. Because I feel like we're getting a variety of people that can talk, but also do different styles. The only thing I got to say that annoys me about pro wrestling right now is every fucking body that does the Canadian Destroyer. That needs to stop. It used to be a finishing move, okay?
Well, there's a lot of finishing moves that are being used by everybody.
That's true.
I was saying, though, when you were doing a flipping power driver, that was supposed to be it. You get dropped on your head after flipping 360. Dropping your head. You're supposed to be laid out flat and probably dead.
Well, come on, man. You talk about Jake the Snake Roberts earlier. His DDT was supposed to be like the end all be all. You're dropping somebody on their neck.
Oh, fuck, it's an opening move.
I mean,
it's an opening spot now.
He's at the end.
I mean,
it's an opening move. The floating DDT gets used in the first 5 minutes of any 60-minute main event. If it's lucky enough to go 60 minutes, when was the last time you can remember an actual...
When I'm seeing 5 Canadian Destroyers in one match, that's when I know I'm a little concerned.
Well, when was the last time you can remember an actual Broadway? First of all, in a title match. Second of all, where a finishing move is only used one time. I think the last time that was being done was probably Undertaker and Stone Cold. Like, the Big Show kicked out of Stone Cold's Stunner the first time. I think it was like 99 or 2000. And then since then, it's like everybody wants to kick out of a finisher. And it wasn't even allowed back then. So for 20 years, you have all of these new fans who think that the finisher is the setup to the finisher 5 times. And it's called a finisher for a reason. And you only see the one-time finisher use in the independent circuits now.
Well,
see, you're not wrong, because I remember when I was working for Rocky Mountain Championship Wrestling, and that's when they decided to turn me from heel to face. They gave me the moniker of the East Coast Kid, and they wanted me to be a good guy. And during the time, I used a finisher that was called I called it the bitch slap, which later got changed to the wild card because I'm a good guy. Which was a full Nelson into a rock bottom. But he wanted me to change my finisher, and he wanted me to bring into old school mentalities, which I started using for a little while until I went back to the wild card, which was he wanted me to finish people with a top rope crossbody. As old school as it can be.
Oh man!
Yikes.
That is super old school. That's some Dynamite Kid shit.
Yeah, that was my finisher for about a year as a face.
1980s.
Yeah, that was my finisher for about a year when I first turned face. As he refused. It's like, you can use the wild card as a setup.
So that was corny.
What's that? That was Mr. 2020 Blind Mike.
Oh, really? Blind Mike? Okay.
Yeah. So he was the one that he's like, first off, I lost the bet because I told him there's no way I could ever turn face. He figured it out. But once I turned face, he said, I want an old school finish out of you, and that's what he decided that my finish had to be. So It worked for a little while. Like, the fans appreciated the old school mentality, but the reason I went back to the wild card is it lost its flavor. People didn't care because it's like, okay, I would do a match, I would go over, I would finish with a cross body. The following match, somebody's opening with a cross body.
Right. Yeah, they're coming off the ropes and throwing it in the first 3 minutes. Yeah.
It completely killed the shine of my finisher. So, as cool as it was to bring old
And
school
somebody
back,
on the same card using your move as just a work, and they're not, even trying to like copy the finish. Somebody else using your move on the same card, man, that's fucking like in the old days. That would get your ass kicked in the backstage area.
That's a backstage ass whooping straight up.
See,
Yeah.
and
Can you imagine if somebody used Randy Savage's move, and while he's backstage looking at the damn match, he's like, "I'm gonna kill this motherfucker here."
I'm gonna snap into it. Yeah.
Oh, I'm about to show him how to snap into a Slim Jim.
Rest in peace,
I
Randy.
think that there's some good and some bad going on with today. If you're not a 40-year-old fan and you've just come into it, like teenagers now,
Right.
I think that there's a lot of value going on with AEW because they are showing them some old school gimmick.
Oh yeah.
And, as long as you're not older than that demographic, the 13 to 21-year-old. If you go beyond that, then you have to go to some really extreme lengths to be able to hold people's attention. And that's where the dilemma is. How many high spots can you carry during one match? And, the promo work is definitely getting better. That's for sure. There was about a 10-year span where the promos were just god awful.
Showing that he got a good promo game like his daddy.
Like if John Cena is the highlight of your promo of the night, then you've got a fucking problem on your hands.
Well, it depends on the Cena because it depends on the Cena because the good guy Cena, yeah, he was garbage, but the rap Cena,
Always gonna be my favorite Cena.
the rap Cena,
definitely a totally different gimmick. Yeah, definitely.
which I blow people's minds all the time when we talk about John Cena. It's like what frustrates me about Cena is he became one of Vince McMahon's normal three move big guys. And it pisses me off because you can go online and find shit of Cena before he made it big. The guy was a fucking cruiserweight. He had talent out the ass. He could work chain.
Oh, you talking about when he was the prototype?
Yeah, when he was working chain, he was working technical, he was working high spot. He had ability.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden now he's just a fucking big dumb brawler with a mouth. That's what pisses me off about Cena.
Move the doom.
If you go back, what is it, almost 20 years, maybe it's 18 years now, right whenever he came back from, whenever he made the first appearance from OVW, whenever Batista was the Leviathan,
Right.
whenever he makes that first transition into the show, and his first exposure with the Undertaker, whenever he's making that first run with him, which I think is like 2001, 2002.
That sounds about right.
He's still working very much with all of his tools in his belt. He's doing some high spots. He's doing a lot of flips. He's doing arm drags for goddamn. I mean, challenge John Cena in the last 5 years to see a match with an arm drag in it. You're not going to fucking see it. But back then, the Taker's always been really good. If you recognize his talent, if it's time to put them over, he's always been a great company guy, and he's always been a great business guy, that he understands that this guy needs to be put over in this way. And then as soon as that feud with the Taker was over, the first run of it, and like I said, that's 2000, 2001, 2002 maybe. Once that was over and he's now in the big league and it's his first of 13 championships, all of that stuff went out the window and he goes to the 3 moves of doom very quickly. And that's where I think Vince has lost his touch from 30 years ago, coming out of the 80s and the early 90s, going into the close of the 2000s, where he was able to see people working an actual Broadway or at least a 30-minute and letting them show their whole repertoire of moves. Now it's the 3 moves of doom on everybody, even if it's someone they're just trying to put over. Like, imagine if Rocky Maivia was to come out now.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Oh, jeez.
Right?
No.
Not The Rock, Rocky Maivia. Yeah.
Rocky
Oh, I know.
Maivia.
I know exactly
Oh, no.
what you're talking
No.
about. You're talking about
God,
If that guy was to come out
top.
now, it would be a fucking disaster. It'd be a shit show immediately. And, I think that's where Vince has kind of lost touch with it. And
But Vince has always been that way. Vince has always been that way. Vince has always been the big monster lover, like
Yes,
the Sid
He's always been
Vicious,
the
the
big
Hulk
guy.
Hogan's, even Diesel. It took a lot to get people like Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, Eddie Guerrero, fucking Rey Mysterio to be the top guys of the business because he didn't believe in the smaller guy. The same thing I think buried WCW is they had hella talent in their luchadors and their cruiserweights, but all they wanted to do was just ride on the
trying to get a big guy over. Yeah.
the WWE dinosaurs.
What really ruined them was when they decided to do the cruiserweight killer like angle where Kevin Nash was killing everybody's cruiserweight character and taking their mask. Just ruining all these cruiserweights.
I think they had a long-term plan in place to where maybe they would all come back and get him without the mask, but they lost sight of it very quickly. And it became, like you said, where Kevin Owens is the killer of all the cruiserweights. I think there was a long-term plan in place, and they just lost sight of it super quick.
Well,
which is something that Vince does all the time.
Well, one of the things I absolutely despise comes from traditionalism and belief in old school belief systems in the business. I would if it were my promotion, I would never allow that gimmick to happen. And the reason being I would say that is not because he's crushing cruiserweights. No, that's fine. The mask thing. Most of the people that he's demasking are luchadors, and true luchadors in Mexico, that is a huge, huge thing.
Hell,
that's not even a slap in the face. That's worse than that.
That's a loss of career and respect.
You're fucking up their international. Mm-hmm. You're fucking up their international career that way.
Yes, you are.
And he didn't care, or doesn't care to this point. And you would think, looking back over the past 30 years, going into Raw and Attitude and all that stuff, looking back, his best ratings come from, other than Stone Cold, Eddie Guerrero, all of the smaller not cruiserweights, but just a hair above it. These guys that weigh 225. Those are where all of his best ratings come from, other than Stone Cold. Like, The Undertaker actually never drew that big a TV rating.
He did for WrestleMania, though.
Yeah, for WrestleMania because of the streak. But him and The Big Show and all of these other super heavyweights that they try to put over, their ratings are pale in comparison to all of these guys that are only 225. Even Kurt Angle outdrew some of these guys that are, monster heavyweights. And Kurt Angle was, he was a work to begin with. And
Kurt Angle is...
I feel bad for Kurt. I love Kurt, but I feel so bad for Kurt. The guy's a legitimate athlete, a gold medalist in the Olympics.
Mm-hmm. With a broken fucking neck.
Yep. With a broken neck. This guy is...
with a broken neck. Nobody can ever top that shit.
Dude
Nobody can top that shit.
Dude is as legit could be, and they had him running around with a little cowboy hat, drinking milk, playing the ukulele. Like, this dude had a hard fall from grace with the WWE, but God bless him, he's still playing it to this day. You can find him on social medias, fucking around with a guitar, pretending like he could sing "Kumbaya, My Lord," and asking during the.
Ass can't sing a lick.
No, but he's still playing the gimmick, man, and God bless him for it. But it seems like that's the character you don't, or that's the person you don't give a character like that to, because he doesn't need that gimmick. He's fucking Kurt fucking Angle. Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. For the first couple of years when he went to TNA, I love this gimmick where he was kind of like, he looked like he was like an MMA fighter going to the ring. He'd come up on that platform and shit. I was like, this is what Kurt Angle should have fucking looked like. Like, cause like I was sitting there, I was just, oh shit, they got Kurt looking hardcore and shit. He got on a mouthpiece and everything.
The two legitimate.
Somebody up.
The two times I really dug Kurt Angle was when he first came out and he was just the Olympian and it was all about he was as a Mr. USA as you could be.
Yep.
That was legit, and the time when he turned heel with the mouth guard shit, where he would snap off with that fucking ankle lock, and he was looking to break people's legs. Those were the legit fucking Kurt Angles to me. The guy mocking Steve Austin with milk and cookies, not so much. Funny, it was entertaining, it was funny, but that to me, it's like Kurt wasn't the guy to do it with.
See, the one thing I loved about Kurt, though, I didn't like it. I didn't like his gimmick. I thought his gimmick was goofy. But, man, when he got up in that ring, man, it was fucking magic. It didn't matter who the fuck it was. He always made magic in the ring.
He could work with a broom in the ring. That's for damn sure. He could do it no matter what. And, you know...
Man, what are you talking about? He could work in the ring with an invisible man.
Yeah.
Look, I watched a match in BBOW. Like, I'm not against the gimmick match in any way, shape, or form. And one of the greatest magical moments I ever saw was an independent circuit at BBOW. It was a guy named Shama Tango versus a guy called the Missing Link.
Shama Tango, yeah.
Shama was a Papa Shango ripoff, obviously, but he was a voodoo witch doctor, and he's taken on a mental patient. And one of the greatest gimmicks is he turned on his voodoo magic, and he took over Link's mind. And he had him running the ropes back and forth like a hip hop hooray ho type deal. Had the crowd into it and everything. Had the Missing Link beating up himself, and of course Link was fucking taking the bumps and selling the bumps and everything else. Not one spot, not one thing landed. He just watched Shama's hands the whole fucking time and reacted. And I swear to God, dude, it was magic. It was just 2 minutes of pure, like, that is the greatest thing I've ever fucking seen. So I am.
What I just watched recently.
Well, and I
mean,
I feel like in the independent.
I'm just gonna let you know that was probably one of the greatest damn things I've ever seen. This is one of the reasons why I love the independents.
So I'm not opposed to the gimmick match or the gimmick mentality. You know, I don't want people to have that wrong.
Social distancing match. Somebody pulled off a Canadian destroyer being 6 feet away. That was beautiful.
Oh jeez.
It's like, oh shit, Canadian destroyer. Front flip. Other guy drops himself on the head.
Well, what's the dude I've seen on social media a lot? He's an independent worker. He's got like his gimmick is like his penis is like fucking Thor.
Joey Ryan.
Joey yeah.
Ryan. Yeah.
I mean, shoot, and he got balls of steel.
Yeah.
Do not atomic drop Joey Ryan.
So again, I'm not against the over the top gimmick or the gimmick match in any way, shape, or form. If it sells right, it sells right. It's just certain people.
Oh, yeah.
Like I've always stated, you know what I've always wanted to find? I wanted to find a dude kind of like Anthony. You know, I wanted a dude who was big and just a really huge guy. And I wanted to put him in like Chuck Taylor's and Oshkosh Gosh fucking like coveralls with a tie-dye shirt.
Oh my god.
And one of those helicopter beanies, right? And he would come out to the ring to bop. And we'd give him like the hottest girl we could ever find to play his mother. And the character would be called Baby Stewie. And
that sounds scary as fuck.
And the whole entire thing is to him, it's all playing. Like you have him come out to the ring with a bucket full of Legos, pick a kid out of the crowd, and start playing Legos with the kid. When the match happens, he thinks it's just play fighting until he actually gets hurt. Like somebody does something that he actually feels, and he starts crying and throws a temper tantrum and stomps the shit out of his opponent. But the whole entire time, he has no idea that it's an actual match. He just thinks it's playing. He's just a giant kid. I always wanted to see that gimmick happen because I think it would have sold.
That would be a great fucking gimmick. I ain't gonna see here.
So,
I would actually watch.
Let me ask you guys a question.
Hell, if I were a wrestler, I would actually do that fucking gimmick. I ain't gonna sit here and lie.
We're talking about gimmicks, and obviously we've thrown around AEW a few times.
What's that?
What's your guys'
that's
take
fucking
on Orange
gold.
Cassidy?
Butch Cassidy?
Orange
Cassidy?
Orange Cassidy.
the most dangerous wrestler ever in the history of wrestling with his dangerous kicks
in the history of the world.
His pedigree. They've had to ban him from several promotions because he has too many stiff strikes. This man is one of the most lethal people that's in wrestling today.
I don't know. I think that still goes to New Jack.
New Jack is by far the most dangerous person to ever wrestle.
Yeah, I think that's New Jack.
New Jack said to Orange Cassidy, "Damn, I thought I was dangerous. Fuck that. I am never wrestling you, kid."
Yeah, I don't know shit about this guy. Again, I haven't been paying attention to modern. So what is that? That's its gimmick, is that he's the most dangerous man, and I guess he's a joke.
No.
Orange
Cassidy is the master.
Orange Cassidy is the guy that doesn't try hard at all. Like, let me put it like this.
He knows what he's doing is fake,
comes in,
and he does not give a shit.
He does like a half thumbs up, rolls into the ring like he's like halfway dead, jumps up, pretends he's gonna go up to the corner to just, do like something to get the crowd to pop. He goes up one single rope, does like a thumbs up. Everybody freaking just pops like crazy. And then, like, he won't, like, try to the match, right? Somebody will try to push him down. He'll push down, and then he'll kip up.
It's almost an old play on the old Raven gimmick, where he rolled in and acted like he didn't give a fuck about anything that was going on in the ring. But whenever it came time to tie up, he could really put a hurt on somebody.
Okay.
It's kind of like that, except for they put a little bit more of a... millennial's not the right word, but they put a little bit more of a different spin on it with the same kind of edge, where he just doesn't give a fuck. He's there for the paycheck, but he can actually lay down on somebody.
Nice. He just did a match with Pac
essentially,
on AEW's pay-per-view, and that was some entertaining shit. It was like it was like a great mid-card match.
I've seen in a long
Pac was
time.
still getting heat, being the heel. And Orange Cassidy was putting Pac to work, and Pac was just getting pissed off with him. Just like, are you going to fucking try? And like...
and he refuses to try.
So essentially...
And then for instance, if
so he's a dangerous slacker. The best way to describe it is he's a dangerous slacker.
Basically, because you don't know what he's going to pull off. Like, hell, he was an independent TV champion for almost a year. And it was the most funniest shit, because he went against a lot of people. He went against Janela, he went against Kylie Ray, he went against Eric Stevens and rolled up Eric Stevens with like some type of trap roll. Like, it was just the most greatest thing ever. Like, I cannot hate on this gimmick. Hell, I just watched a match with him and Velveteen Dream like last night from a WWN pay-per-view. Because they've been throwing out new like free magic and shit on YouTube. And it's him and Velveteen Dream is with NXT right now. And I've never heard such crazy popping from both sides. And it was just, it was brilliant.
It's you're making me think of it now. Last night I finally sat down and watched the Jay and Silent Bob reboot movie. It's on the grounds of wrestling. If you've seen the movie or not, I still jaw dropped laughing my ass off that Chris Jericho was the leader of the KKK in that movie.
Yeah. About this movie?
Jesus.
I need to watch this. I'm completely sold.
Yes, Chris Jericho was the Grand Wizard or the Grand Dragon, whatever it is, of this group of KK members. Talking about hater tots and shit.
I don't even know what to say to that one.
It's actually funny.
Dear God.
It is funny. It was a funny movie, but that particular scene, like as soon as he lifted the hood, I'm just like, get the fuck out of here. They did not get Chris Jericho to do this.
That was like the least racist guy I could think of the wrestling. So that's what makes it so funny. That man has put on almost a lot of people in different races and different generations. To see him as a KKK leader, I got to see this shit. I need to see it. I need to find it.
Anthony.
Where can I find this movie, Chris?
It,
God dang.
it's on DVD. Go rent it on at a Redbox.
It's on Amazon right now.
All right, I'm going to my Amazon Prime account, and we're about to get primal.
So anyway, you were about to say something.
I was just about to ask Anthony.
By the way, has anybody been checking out Tiger King?
What do you think?
What do you think? What?
Has anybody been checking out Tiger King?
I was going to ask Anthony what he thought of...
Tiger King's nuts.
No.
I need to watch it because I've been seeing a whole bunch of people making comments about this damn show.
Anthony.
What the hell?
Anthony, UA's been trying for about 2 minutes to ask you a question.
It's okay. It's over and done with. Don't worry about it.
UA.
Nah, it's okay, Anthony.
What's your question?
It's okay. Don't worry about it, man. It's all good.
Every time he tried to start the question, you'd be like, "What about this Tiger King stuff or whatever?" It's like, dude, he's talking.
All right, I'm listening.
Nah, it's all good. It's all good. It's a really bad question, anyways.
Well, no, I want to hear the question now. You've got to ask it. I got the attention for you. The floor is yours.
I was just gonna ask Anthony, since we were talking about Chris Jericho, what did you think of Chris Jericho's new theme song, Judas?
Well, considering it's his song, I love it.
Hello? Yeah, exactly. It's like
I'm waiting.
in my opinion, I think it's one of the greatest theme songs that he's had. I don't know if Anthony can hear me.
I don't know, Anthony. Can you hear him at all?
I cannot hear him at all.
Well, thanks for letting us know.
Well, there's a problem.
There is the problem. That's why he didn't know you were asking the question. He said, speaking of, since we were speaking on Chris Jericho, what do you think of his new theme song, Judas, which is obviously his song from Fozzy?
A fucking hit. I mean, I know the song's been out for a while now, but like, it's great. I mean, how the crowd can sing to it, how the crowd loves it. To be quite honest, I think it's probably one of his best interest songs.
After they're done singing.
I'm saying this compared to the Wrestle Kingdom themes he's had too.
Well, speaking of Jericho and Fozzy, one of the things that made me a fan of Fozzy was actually not one of his original songs, and it wasn't the fact that he was Chris Jericho. One of the first songs I ever heard, though, was a cover of Ozzy Osbourne's "Over the Mountain."
Yeah,
that was a good rendition.
Okay. That's what got me into Fozzy more than the fact that it was Jericho, more than the fact of any of his original stuff. Was what they did for that cover was just like, okay, you know what I mean? Like, you get the golf clap. We're in. Let's do this. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I didn't get into Fozzy until like I say 2008. That's about when I started checking it out. You know, it's like, you know what? Fuck it. Let me check out Chris Jericho shit. I'm just like, oh, the motherfucking actually sing.
Oh, he can definitely sing. Yeah.
Well,
like, I had a newfound respect.
I was going to say, to his credit,
like,
Jericho's been known to be able to sing for a long time.
Because I already respected him as a wrestler, but god dang, you know, as a singer, I was like, damn,
so, on a scale of 1 to 10, with Chris Jericho, I guess, being the 10. What other wrestlers would you consider to be the biggest crossover or holdover to the old days of kayfabe? Because Chris Jericho is like one of the only few who can really pull off that style at this point in time, in my eyes.
I don't know. I think Moxley's doing a good job on it too.
Who?
John Moxley. He's been doing a good job on it too.
He's good, but they just can't find the right way to place a gimmick.
And then I'm going to give it to MJF, too, because MJF is always in fucking character.
Well, that's true, yeah.
So, I mean, there are some young cats that are doing. Cody's doing it, too. So, it's just like, there's some young cats that...
Cody is definitely a holdover because he's doing everything he can to hold on to Dusty.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. Yeah. But as far as without having that family feed into it, Chris Jericho and, like you said, MJF, okay. Outside of that, who else falls into that category if you're not going to New Japan?
That's hard for me to answer with not watching current incarnations of pro wrestling. So I abstain.
That's hard for me to answer, being
Alex
primarily a WWE watcher.
I'll say Alex Hammerstone, Danhausen, Warhorse. Trying to think here.
So obviously the answer is the list is very small.
Well, I think
Very much so at this point.
As much as it disheartens me to say, I think wrestling has evolved beyond the old school mentality.
Yeah, and so, but if you look at it, in each one of the organizations, the top draws or the people who get the most action, the people who are getting the most heat or getting the biggest pop with the fans, are the people who are holdovers to that. So where does the industry go?
Well, I think you're answering your own question. I think even though the wrestling has evolved beyond the old school mentality, most times out of 10, the things that get the biggest pops or the biggest draws is when you pay homage in some way, shape, or form to the old school mentality. One of the perfect examples I can give, I mean, it's not 80s old school or 70s old school, but like whenever they do a reunion of D-Generation X, tell me one time they've had an empty chair in an arena.
Right.
Never.
Every time they come on, the whole crowd pops, obviously.
You know what I mean? So I think there's room for the old school mentality to come back. It's just getting the business to understand that the old school mentality is still appreciated by the fans.
And I think it's the biggest appreciation, you know? Go ahead, man.
I think part of the problem, at least in terms of for WWE, is the fact that it has evolved and it's moved away so much from even the Attitude Era. Like, from the Attitude Era, you went from that to the PG era.
Right.
And from there, it just went downhill so goddamn fast.
I have no idea what he's saying.
And, yeah, I know.
Well, no, it's fine. Wait, I'm hearing them, so the stream is hearing them. Just pull up the stream, you'll be able to hear it. But yeah. I agree with you. But I think part of the PG era, two things I think have ruined WWE. There's two things. One was both are Vince's fault. One is there is no direct competition to WWE. WWE was at its prime when it had competition from WCW and the upcoming ECW. When Vince bought WCW and ECW and closed them down and utterly destroyed them, there was no competition, so the writing became lazy. One. Two, Vince has been so worried about turning WWE from just pro wrestling into an entertainment conglomerate, movies, TV, music, all the such, that he's lost sight of what pro wrestling is. To him, pro wrestling is just a byproduct of everything he's trying to make. It's not the mainstay. And I think that's hurting the E as well. Not the business in general, but the E. But I think those are the two biggest downfalls. And this is no disrespect to AEW. This is no disrespect to Impact. But I don't think they hold the caliber of WCW, ECW yet to become a threat to the WWE. So E is never going to change their differences until they have somebody who is actually threatening their top status.
And I could not agree with you more. And
I think that there's a big extent of that where they're beholden to the stock or the shareholders, and the entertainment conglomerate that has come out of it since the Attitude Era has taken on a life of its own. And so he has lost that connection to 20 years ago, and it's grown since then to the point where he can't control it like he used to. So I think that's why we are where we are with it now.
And I've heard.
Well, you know, I
like when it.
What happened,
right
Anthony? You sound like you are far away, sir.
I switched to my phone from my computer because that's.
Can you hear UA now though?
Well, okay then.
Yes, I can.
Okay, good. Well then it works.
Hey.
But yeah, I heard Vince.
That's fine.
Shit though, man. Like when it comes to motherfuckers want to go to AEW. Like I heard he lost his shit when Matt didn't re-sign. because he knew where the fuck Matt was going.
Well, that's the thing. Like,
I mean, that's
there's
not exactly a surprise right now because anyone who's asking.
good. No, good.
Holy shit!
Okay.
I don't know,
Oh, go on.
No, you go on.
No, I agree with you because aside from AEW, you have AEW, you have Impact, you have Ring of Honor. They don't hold a torch to WWE. And yes, AEW is getting close to it. And anyone who's asking for their walking papers, Vince knows exactly where they're going to. So his top stars, like Jon Moxley, like Matt Hardy, when you know they're asking for their walking papers, leave and show up on one of his opposing brands that is picking up ahead of steam like WWE did in the 80s and 90s. I mean, yeah, it's going to make him furious as all hell.
And I think that's what it's. I think that's what's needed.
I think Vince needs to step.
I agree. I do think Vince needs to step down, but I hate to say it this way. I don't think Triple H is the right one to take over.
He's a good bridge to what's next.
I don't know.
I think. And just because he is part of the old school and a connection to the new school, I think he is the right bridge, but they're going to have to find the right guy who can carry it forward from there. Like he needs to be the behind-the-scenes torch that carries everything. He can't be the front lines guy because he's always in such false character. That's the thing with Triple H at this point in time. He's become a caricature of his old character.
Well, see that's where I'm going with it. Is he's too front forward, and he's still a gimmick. He's still a character. I think the person that should be taking over the business legitimately should be Shane, because Shane also has that connection to the old school mentality. He was raised in this business. You know, he understands this, but he's been in the ring working this business. He knows it, but he also knows that he's not a main eventer. He's not a former WWE champion. He's not a major draw. He is just simply a businessman.
Right, but he's also an insider of the business and has worked as a hand. He has been put over as one of the boys. He is in the locker room. So he's that next connection. And like you're talking about with Triple H, the fact that he's been so over for so long, it's incredibly hard to put him into that driver's seat of just driving the company, because every time he sees something he doesn't like, he wants to use it as a gimmick to jump in the ring with that person. And I think Shane is the person who can not go that route and just drive the company. I think he's hard enough in both worlds that he can stay out of the ring and drive what's going on.
Well, guys, not to cut this one short, but we have been joined by our expected guest. He has joined us, so I'm going to pass the torch over to Mr. Christopher Sutter to not only introduce our guest, but to start the second half of this show. So, Steve, Chris, the floor is yours.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Hey, everybody. I just want to bring on board Mr. Stephen Joyner. He's our publicist and PR behind the scenes for everybody who's on right now. And Stephen announced earlier this week that he was willing to do an interview, which he rarely does. And he's in connection with all kinds of Hollywood legends and people from the past and people from today within the Hollywood community. And he's somebody who's been a great boon to my career and everybody else who's on, helping us getting exposed to everybody. Everybody welcome Stephen Joyner. How you doing, Steve?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing good, man. Doing real good. So the guys have been nice enough to let me take the lead here on bringing you in on an interview portion with everybody. For everybody who doesn't know the behind the scenes of what goes on in the podcast world and all that good stuff, Stephen is the guy who puts us in touch with all of our guests. If we've ever had anybody on who's a celebrity, anybody who's been tied in with Hollywood, anybody who's an author, anybody who's a model or an actress or an actor, any of that stuff. Steven has very much been a big part in putting me in touch with those people, and I think for all the other guys on the show.
Yeah,
Steven,
they're all great. Yeah, no, it's been really weird today because I'm in the Midwest right now, and I was talking to a friend of mine back in Martha's Vineyard, and every year, one of my dearest friends wrote the motion picture Jaws, and another guy I know Joe Alves was a production designer. Carl Gottlieb was a screenwriter, and my friend Jeff Voorhees was in the movie. I know a lot of people tied to that movie. Well, this is the 45th anniversary of Jaws. Came out in 1975.
Yeah, this summer is the 45th. Yeah.
Yeah, and Martha's Vineyard every year has like a Jaws Fest thing, and you get people from literally England, you name it. And because this was a very significant year, am I still on?
Yeah, you're on, bud.
Okay, because this was the 45th, and you guys got to keep something in mind. Carl and Joe and even Spielberg, they're like, older now, and Carl had a health issue last year that we thought we were going to lose him. So this was really going to be a big deal because they don't know if they're going to be around when the film turns 50. Literally, even my friend Jeff Voorhees, who played Alex Kentner in the movie, he was a kid that got killed on the raft. That dude's like in his 60s now. People don't realize how time just marches on, and they had to cancel the whole event. It sucks. I got Carl going to St. Louis and New York in a few months, hopefully. I don't even know if that's they haven't said anything. He does screenings and Q&As. So it's sad to tell, older people like them, they have to be indoors. There's just no way. They can't go out at all. Yeah. We can go for a walk, or we can go into an open store, and the elderly are the ones that are really, really at risk. And
they're the reason we're doing the quarantine, really, so, yeah.
So I'm telling my friend Carl, who's a very outgoing guy, you went through all this, rehabilitation with your heart and so on, and they won't let you out of the house. It sucks, but it is the way it is right now. So I've noticed that life is on hold. Everybody knows that. And I think that people are, I don't know, they're just doing their thing. The podcasting world, everybody should be. Look, podcasting is huge right now. This is a really interesting time for podcasters and radio people in general. But people need escapism because there's only so much Netflix and other things you can watch to where you just want to escape. And a lot of people will find your guys' show maybe by accident. You never know. I think social media use is like at an all-time high. Even people that don't go on Facebook are digging around on Facebook. But it's just weird. It's when they shut everything down, you kind of realize everything you take for granted. And so, yeah, I know you do. You're like, oh man, and for me, I like to go out to eat every now and then, and I can't do it. I went and got a couple of pizzas, and I had to order it and sit outside. It was like I felt like a guy who was sharing custody of my kid with my ex-wife, waiting to pick him up or something. It was weird, So
yeah, it's very weird. You're not allowed inside to be able to pick up what you ordered, and they have to bring it out to you. And that
I had to call ahead. And I didn't know this because there's some restaurants where there's some restaurants you can go inside, as you know, and just order your stuff and leave. Well, I got there and they're like, yeah, you can't come in here. I'm like, well, how am I going to order? So I'll just call. So I'm calling the place and I'm looking at the guy taking my order on the phone through the window. That was really little bit of it was like stalkerish stuff. I felt like saying, I know what you're wearing, man, but but I could see you. But I did the order, and then she comes out to take the money, and she's wearing gloves and shit. So I feel like it makes you feel like, God, I'm dirty. So did that. And,
it's funny you mentioned that because, like here in Philadelphia, we got a convenience store known as Wawa, which is kind of like a 7-Eleven but with a deli. And they've shut down where you can only have about 10 people in the store at one time. There's no longer self-serve coffee. All of a sudden, people are being like baristas and have to take your coffee order and make your drinks for you. They're wearing gloves and shit. Mm-hmm. they just recently shut down the deli part. One of the major things that was a draw for them was, ordering a hoagie or a cup of soup or something. They shut that down completely. You're right. You wind up feeling like you're when you're standing on the little pad that says you're 6 feet away from the guy in front of you, when you're in line, or they're handing you your cup of coffee and they're wearing a mask and fucking gloves. You feel like you're patient zero in these things.
It's like, you feel like Hannibal Lecter or some shit, It's like, don't take anything from him. But yesterday, I went with my friend and his girlfriend to a storage unit, and we stopped at a liquor store. Thank God those are open. And
lucky you.
We were across the street from a mall that me and Anthony Williams went to a few months ago, and the whole thing was empty. It was like, it looks like, it just looks. If you guys want to see something really interesting, I don't know if any of you were like fans of the old Twilight Zone TV show.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
There's, I want to say it was in the first season, maybe like the third or fourth episode. There's a really interesting episode about a guy who's walking through a town that's abandoned, and he's, he goes in and things are still running and all that, and it turns out that he's an astronaut, and they want to see how and he was in an isolation chamber. They want to see how he would react. That's a really good episode right there, because you feel like you're walking around and the world's empty. And then you see people scattered here and there, but that mall that me and Anthony hit up, I saw the parking lot, I'm like, damn, this thing was packed. And normally it would be packed. So it's just the adjustment we're making right now. And I think a lot of people are using this time to self-reflect. I got a call from a friend of mine named Freddie, who's in New Jersey, and he does the Wise Guy show. And Freddie's like, you're not going to believe who called me. And I won't say his name, but there was a guy that me and Freddie had a falling out with like over a year ago in Long Island. And the guy called to like make an amends and stuff. He said, I guess he must be going nuts being cooped up. I'm like, yeah. So I think I'm trying to look at the pros of everything. And there are a lot of pros. You get time to reflect. But if you're, I don't know. I mean, this is like, I hope that after this is all over, people are nicer to each other, and I hope they wash their damn hands and shit more, and they're a little bit more cleanly. But it's just weird. And I heard you guys talking about wrestling when I got on, and I was just reading that another wrestler in the WrestleMania coming up is sick, and it's like, damn.
Yep, they're falling like stones.
Yeah.
Well, there is no such thing as social distancing in the ring. I mean, it's a 16 by 16 foot ring. If you're standing 6 foot apart from each other, how you doing the moves? You know what I mean? So things transport very quickly, because to be a pro wrestler, whether it's an independent circuit or even WWE, it's a very intimate, close quartered group. Most of what you do is very, very, intimate with each other as far as like inside personal spaces. There is no social distancing if that's your career.
Well, they call their spots too, don't they? Like, I mean, you were a wrestler, Chris. I mean,
both Chris's were. I just found that out today.
Both Chris's, yeah. Yeah, so you have to call spots, and with the audience crowd, you can get away with it. But I heard from Maddox that they were, I don't know if it was a SmackDown or Raw, one of those shows. It was like, yeah, you can hear them calling spots. It's kind of weird looking, And then the announcer.
Yeah, this past Friday night they had Friday Night SmackDown, and it was without an audience. Some segments of it were, and if you know what you're listening for, you could definitely hear them call spots. It was kind of weird, especially for anybody watching out there, like a 15-year-old who isn't wise to the business, or even a 30-year-old for that matter, and all of a sudden you can hear them talk. Whenever they're in the corner and they're clenching up and they're getting ready to talk about, go to the next corner, come off the ropes, I'm going to do a flip, you drop the elbow, and you can hear some mumbles of that going on. Like, this is kayfabe way the fuck out the window.
Mm-hmm.
And
very much so, yeah.
It's going to expose some things to people who aren't wise. Even at this point in time, you would think most people are if they're a fan, but for the people who have tried to remain ignorant for the entertainment value of it, it's going to really blow a lot of shit up if they try to do a live show.
Look, I'll put it to you this way, and it's a hard thing for an independent pro wrestler. Chris will understand this, and I'm pretty sure Steve will too, because of the fact that he does work with a couple guys that have, former WWE or whatever. But I know the wrestling world, whether it's the WWE or in the independent circuit, the rule number one is always the show must go on. That's always rule number one. But I think for the preservation of the art form that is pro wrestling and what kayfabe is left, I think it needs to be shut down till this is over. I hate to say it that way, but I think it should.
Which actually,
I agree with you 100%.
I think it actually raises a really cool opportunity. If that is, with that being the case, that means that Friday Night SmackDown on Fox or Monday Night Raw on USA. If that were to take a hiatus, or they were to show best of shows or Hall of Fame shows or whatever, and the independent circuits were able to continue to work on, then there would be a kind of an upswing to the mentality of the old territory days, and I think that's something that the business sorely needs. And I think this is the only way that can happen congruently, is if the show itself gets shut down, the independent or the fairground shows where it can be done at in the high school gyms. I think this is a place for those shows or those circuits to get a real rise out of things. And now we can actually have a blending instead of exterminating the old territory thing. We could actually bring it on. And maybe that's something that really helps the craft, I think, in the next near future. Hopefully that's something that does come out of it. I was thinking about that the other day. What if we could get, the perfect blend of, instead of squashing the old territories, we embrace them and bring them on and put them over. So that way, whenever the show comes back on, now the territories are kind of blinging a little bit again, and there's kind of an upswing in that old circus style show.
I think it's important for the big companies like AWE, Impact, and of course WWE or AEW and WWE and all. I know I'm too many letters, but I always thought that it was stupid of them to not acknowledge the independent circuits in some way. And I don't just mean like OVW, but I mean like any of them. Just throw a dartboard and pick a city with that has an independent, federation, and acknowledge those federations, because of the fact that you're letting the fans know that even the talent that's in the WWE nowadays or the AEW nowadays, they came from here.
Well, that's the bridge that I'm talking about. Maybe not so much as acknowledging CCW or OVW or whatever in Southern California or New Mexico or whatever. Maybe not so much mentioning the organization, but bringing on their stars. Like, look at all these guys in the rosters right now who are probably going to go down because they've been exposed. They were in crowds overseas and to the night of the national quarantine. So there's going to be a huge portion of that roster that's going to be hit, which means we're going to be losing them for an exponential amount of time. So why not use this as that opportunity to kind of bridge the gap? Maybe somebody does get mentioned in their organization, but at least bringing some new guys on who actually work the craft as hands back in the 90s and 80s, who work it that way, working with a form of kayfabe, bringing those guys back in. I think this is that bridge that maybe the business could really, really use.
Well, maybe one of the smartest things that somebody like Vince could do, like he doesn't want to shut down WrestleMania, but he's losing all his stars to the coronavirus. Maybe the happy medium is, I hate to use the term scab, but scab some indie circuit guys up and give them a shot.
Right, yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Some of these guys who can actually work high spots, can really call on the fly, and they're able to, some of the guys who worked some title matches and have actually worked Broadways in the past 12 months, let's come on, give them a 15-minute spot and see what happens, because some of those guys are going to be lightning in the bottle, just like the Attitude Era. Nobody saw some of those guys come on from 94 to 2001. There's a lot of guys that came out of the blue, and I think this is a very big opportunity to let that kind of happen again.
I think that's a great idea because I think it's a win-win for everybody. Vince gets to keep his pay-per-view. The show goes on, and even if it's the one and only time these guys get that exposure, that will do wonders for them in the independent circuit. It's like, I worked WrestleMania, you know.
Yeah, you know the next even though it's not in business, but if like OVW was going right now, then all of a sudden you could say, hey, we got the Leviathan. He was in one of the prelim matches of WrestleMania. What that does to ticket sales, what kind of a big shot in the arm that does for every promotion that actually gets to be included in it. This is a time for, maybe not Vince, but Cody to definitely be an ambassador and like really fucking like not just put, because right now these national shows are really just big production regionals. So if you were to take one of these and actually make it a real national show where we're bringing the new hot shit kid from San Jose and the badass from fucking Austin and putting them in the ring, oh shit, now you got magic. That's what needs to happen right now.
Well, I wanted to switch gears here for a second, Chris.
Sure.
Rutter, because
yeah, man, go ahead.
Actually, all you guys. You know how you talk about, you're effing binge, right? You talk about binge watching and stuff. I've been putting together a list of movies that people should not watch right now.
Oh, Jesus, yeah.
Okay, so I don't have it in front of me, but
number one, Napoleon Dynamite.
Napoleon. Well, that didn't make the list. The Shining is a definite no. Diary of Anne Frank.
Outbreak is a horrible
Outbreak,
movie.
12 Monkeys, Walking Dead. Walking Dead, you're just asking for nightmares.
2012.
2012. There's a lot of movies you should not be watching right now.
And also,
I'm serious about this because people are going to watch. I mean, I watched a documentary on Howard Hughes and realized I had more in common with the guy than I wanted to.
Right now, you actually do. And as part of our show, we do binge watching TV shows and everything with everybody. So one of the shows that I actually had on the list from an interview was somebody said watch Doomsday Preppers. And at the beginning of the shut-in, me and my co-host Joe were like, oh, okay, cool. This might be some comedy relief right now. No, it's not at all. Like,
no, I will watch Mad Max and the Road Warrior. I mean, that's just fun. Because you know what? Even though it's the end of the world, those folks are out driving. But for the most part,
it's a battle for gas, not clean air.
Well, if we're gonna do a list like that, then I would say number one on the list would probably be like I Am Legend.
Ooh.
Oh hell yeah! Now that, but he still got out during the day, but I Am Legend. He was alone. You want to know? You want to know a little trivia that's kind of useless, but what the hell about wrestling and I Am Legend?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
How are those two movies? What movie prop was used in that was used in a big wrestling promotion?
The kitchen sink. I don't know. I don't know what.
Yeah.
When Will Smith and I Am Legend was shooting golf balls off the Intrepid, that's where they did the Yokozuna Body Slam Challenge back in the 1994.
Was that the Lex Luger Express? Yeah, that's right.
That's what launched. That's Intrepid, and he was launching golf balls off that.
Okay, yeah, that was during the Lex Luger deal. Yeah.
Yeah, they tried to make him a babyface, and well, you know what happened. But yeah, that's the same thing. The Intrepid. So,
okay.
Yeah, that's useless trivia. So when you watch it with somebody, pretend like you just found it out.
Ruin it now with people watching.
Yeah, no, but there's a lot of movies I think that people are plugging into like really bad shit too, and so they're watching like bad things they shouldn't be watching. They need to be watching stuff that, is uplifting. I also think that people should stay away from musicals because that's just a nervous breakdown waiting to happen.
It's kind of part of the show, isn't it?
Well, fuck, dude.
Yes, but.
Fuck, dude! I was scheduled to watch La La Land with my girl tonight. You just ruined that for me.
I was gonna say you're talking to someone who is a big fan of both Broadway and Hollywood musicals, and you're asking me not to watch them. That's little hard to do.
You can. I mean, I'm not. Anybody can watch anything. It's just what's funny about musicals is, okay, so I managed a comedic actor named Eddie Dees, and he was in Greece. And Me and Eddie went to
Yeah.
a Grease screening last year in Fresno, California, and they had the sing-along.
Okay.
And my friend Barry Pearl, who was one of the T-Birds, he was in the film as well, and Susan Buckner. And me and Eddie are at the sing-along thing, and they're showing the lyrics, and we're like, holy shit, we didn't realize how dirty some of these lyrics were. And I'm like, were you aware of this back in the day? He's
Oh,
like,
yeah, no.
Oh, they're totally talking about fucking. Totally. Yeah.
Well, with the Grease lighting, he talks
Yeah.
about it's like a pussy wagon. And I'm like, Eddie, did you know about this? He's all, no, Steve, I thought we were just making a. I'm like, yeah, this is some nasty shit they sunk in there. So
How is Eddie doing?
Eddie's doing good. I talked to him the other day actually. He's doing really well. He's down to 112 pounds, so
He didn't have much to lose to begin with. That boy was always skinny.
The last time I saw him was a week before Christmas, and we went to a delicatessen in West Hollywood, and he could hardly eat anything, and he said, I'm going to go back to Maryland to see my mom and brother, and then I'm going to get my heart looked at, because he had a heart problem last year. We just didn't talk about it to people.
Right.
And well, the rest happened. He called me the day before he had surgery, and then he was shelved for a long time. But now, who was it that said they liked musicals?
That would be UA. He's one of our co-hosts of Press A Gaming podcast, and also occasionally shows up to After Hours, so you might recognize the voice.
UA, there's a friend of mine. So you're a musical, like you're really into musicals, though. Like you know your stuff, right?
I mean, I wouldn't say that I'm a huge buff or anything, but I could tell you some things. I enjoy them immensely, so yeah,
that's
go
cool.
ahead.
That's cool. Yeah. No, I was just gonna tell you something. Kind of, if you guys want to see some trippy stuff, there's a friend of mine. Her name is Diane Steinberg, and Diane was a singer in the '70s, and she did a lot of Motown type stuff. You can Google her. And Diane was in probably one of the weirdest drug-filled musicals ever made. She was in the Sgt. Pepper movie.
Oh, Jesus.
Awesome.
Yeah, she played Lucy in the Sgt. Pepper movie. She's a sweet woman. But if you ever see the Sgt. Pepper movie, they don't speak a word in it. It's a rock opera. And this movie has Aerosmith, Alice Cooper, Steve Martin, the Bee Gees, Peter Frampton.
Mm-hmm.
It has... here's what happened with it. Diane told me how she got in the movie and how it all came to be. Robert Stigwood, late Robert Stigwood, had this like Midas touch, and he did Saturday Night Fever, and then he did Grease. Well, he wanted to follow that up with something really big, so what happened was he approached Lennon and McCarthy and all them and said, look, I want to make a musical about Sgt. Pepper's. And it was a stage play for a while. There's a really good, if you want to see the movie critic, there's a movie critic who... He, online, and this guy is really he will take apart a movie. But so Stigwood sunk a lot of money into this movie. He got everybody that was big in the '70s, and the movie is really strange. And the whole movie is about the band being discovered and going to Hollywood and being corrupted. But the thing is that in the town they live in, which is called Heartland, USA, there's these instruments. And they do the whole backstory about the instruments. UA, have you seen the movie?
No, I can't say that I
Okay.
have, but the name sounded familiar.
So the instruments have magical powers that could, like they stopped World War II with them, and it's wild.
It's
And
the Beatles, bro.
They found the pick of destiny.
Yeah.
and so why the band is off becoming famous? George Burns, who's also in it. George Burns narrates the whole damn movie.
Nice.
There's a demented real estate agent named Mr. Mustard who has a van that's got like robots in it, and he steals all the instruments to drop them off to Aerosmith. It is a wild movie, and Diane, who played Lucy, it's got some cool musical numbers in it, but it was just people hated it. And Earth, Wind, and Fire were in it too. They won a Grammy for it. So it's a very... You want to see and you could find it anywhere. Just look up the Sgt. Pepper movie, 1978. You'll be like, "Holy shit! There was a lot of drugs going on in this movie."
Well, I understand. I understand why people hated it.
I
Not
was gonna
necessarily
say,
because it was a
trippy
terrible.
as hell.
Not because it was a terrible movie, but I can understand. Like Beatles fans are notorious for, if you don't do it exactly how it should be for the Beatles, I guess you could say, then you're disrespecting the Beatles. And Sgt. Pepper's is, for a Beatles fan, Sgt. Pepper's is the Bible.
You gotta see the movie. You guys gotta find the movie, hunt it down, watch it, and after you watch it, I'll send Diane Steinberg to your prospective shows. She's really sweet. Her husband is a man named Kenny, who's actually lead guitarist for the Steve Miller Band.
Oh, nice.
I have seen the Sergeant Pepper's, and it's definitely a drug-fueled movie, and with the Beatles being in it, and they wrote it, John Lennon and McCartney are very influential in how the movie is done and shot and all the other visions they have in it, and it's like really super crazy. And if you haven't seen it, you definitely have to see that movie. It's awesome.
Well, I mean, and it's funny because Peter Frampton and the Bee Gees begged to get it, fired. They don't want to do the movie anymore, and they had lied to Frampton because Frampton 2 years earlier did Frampton Comes Alive, and he was trying to get some, kind of mount something back for follow-up. So they had lied to Peter Frampton. George Martin did, and said, "Oh yeah, Paul McCartney's going to be in this movie because there's a weather vane that comes to life. It's really weird, and it turns out to be Billy Preston." But he was lied to. And he thought Paul McCartney was going to be in the movie, and it's just the shenanigans that went on, and you could tell like nothing makes sense at all. Chris, if you remember, their airplane crashes into their hot air balloon gets hit by an airplane, and then they're in the airplane all of a sudden. It's like, hey, that doesn't happen.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say, wasn't it a hot air balloon scene or whatever?
It's just weird stuff, but it's fun because it's.
That was the middle of a lot of their albums had nonsensical lyrics. Like that became a term in rock as far as songwriting goes. And that was a term that came up because of them, because they would write all of these lines and lyrics that two words didn't go together, and it was all nonsense, but they did it to rhythm and tune. So it was great, a great song, but it didn't make any fucking sense at all, and the whole movie was like that.
Well, it's funny because hold on. Sorry, my apologies. This is my life.
No biggie, man.
Well,
how's everything going back in California? Everybody, I know you're.
It's still open.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, it's there. Last time I checked, it's there.
Right.
It's fine. I have a lot of Facebook friends out there, obviously, and they're a lot of people are going to the beach. And
I know. It's so, I don't know, man. I don't know how to feel about that, because if you're in I don't even know if I want to get into this discussion with everybody, but it just seems like this, I don't know. It just doesn't seem like the right time to be so nonchalant.
Well, you're right. And the thing is that we're by nature just told not to do things. I'm at my friend's house in the Midwest here.
Yeah.
And he was in the Marines for many years, and there's another guy staying here who was in the Navy, and they got they are prepared, like the Midwest people have guns here apparently. And they're ready for it, but
they've got guns. What?
All these damn white folks with guns are freaking me out, But they're ready for it, and it's funny because they scoff when they say, "Oh yeah, they're bringing the National Guard." They're like, "Oh, great," but for the most part, it's. LA right now is shut down. If you go to Hollywood Boulevard, it's weird. It looks like it's like Vegas. It's just empty. It's weird.
Yeah, places that are supposed to be crowded are empty, and then places that would seasonally be not so crowded, they got a bunch of people at it. It's just weird, man. I don't know.
See, if I was in Philadelphia where Chris is, I would totally. I know the first thing I would do. I would get a decent camera like a Red or something, and a good tripod, some HD stuff. And I would film myself running up the rocky stairs with music and everything, because there's no one there. I can pull it off.
We call those people tourists.
Well, I'm a tourist, and I want to run up the stairs. It's on my bucket list.
You could do that, but growing up here, no thanks. I'd rather just sit and watch the other idiots do it. But
I just, I would do that. I mean,
fair enough on that,
I think
man.
that I was a big fan of the Rocky franchise. I even like the Creed films, too. My only question is, I know they're going to make a Creed 3. They have to.
Yep.
And I'm sure all of you have seen Creed 1 and 2. are they gonna kill off Rocky ever? Because the dude doesn't die.
Well, whenever
I mean,
Sylvester dies, Rocky dies. So that's probably what we're waiting for.
Yeah, probably.
Well,
Yeah.
well, no, I was watching. You guys saw at least the first Creed, right? It's like
Oh, yeah.
you know, Paulie's dead. It's like you can't kill. I thought Paulie. I mean, it's like he's the kiss of death, man. Everybody around him dies.
Well, everybody who's actually dead is no longer in the movie, and everybody who's alive still comes back. Like Drago came back in the last one. So, you know.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I thought so.
I'd like to see them incorporate Carl Weathers in some kind of dream sequence or something. That'd be cool.
He's too busy with the Mandalorian making real money.
Yeah,
He could almost look they could make him look the same if they did a little bit of makeup. They could do it.
I mean,
yeah, I guess.
I'm again going back to Star Wars. I guess you could say that because I mean, look at what they did for the newest movie with the throwback dream sequence of Luke and Leia training.
I didn't
It
see the
looked-
newest movie.
It
Yeah,
looked like
yeah.
Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher from like 1980. Like they did a great
it's
job
great.
on that.
Yeah, they
I
did an
didn't.
awesome
I didn't see it. I didn't see it at all.
Well, it
Fair enough.
comes out at the end of the
There's A lot
month.
of people who didn't.
I mean, I have to see it. I feel like you know, I'm the only person on earth that hasn't seen it. I just didn't want to.
You're kind of the odd man out right
Oh,
now,
you're-
Steven, to be honest.
Well, I'm just look. I wasn't a big fan of the prequels. I'm sorry, guys. I wasn't all gaga of them. My favorite's always going to be Empire, hands down.
Well, that's
Yeah,
everybody's
and-
favorite.
And Rogue One was a hell of a good movie too, man.
That was a good standalone for sure, yeah.
I sat through 20 minutes of Solo, and that was it. I probably didn't give it a fair enough
Yeah.
attempt.
If you watch it a couple times, it grows on you.
I was going to say that. I
Well-
hated it when I first saw it, and it's kind of grew on me.
Yeah,
You're-
it's a good movie.
I don't know. I don't
Solo
know about.
is definitely a cold start, but if you give it a decent shot, it actually is a really good movie.
Yeah, it definitely turns into something really worth watching. If you just ignore that Harrison Ford isn't Han Solo, you can get through the rest of it. Like that's what turned a lot of people off at the beginning.
Yeah, but the
Really?
kid they
Well,
got wasn't bad. He wasn't Harrison
No,
Ford, but he
yeah,
wasn't bad.
Yeah, he was good. I thought so. He definitely more than passable. That's for sure.
Better than I could have
Well,
done.
okay, so you're all Star Wars. You're all Star Wars fans.
Yeah.
What is the drizzling shits out of the whole series? What is the movie? Is it the Phantom Menace? Which is the one that's just
The holiday
The
special.
The holiday
no,
special.
that's TV.
Yes.
That's TV. We got to go movies. Obviously the holidays, but out of the film franchise, which is like the one that's just.
Ewok Adventure.
Oh, you're talking about TV. You're talking about offshoots, man. I'm talking about the movies. Is it Phantom Menace? Is it what is it?
Well, if we're talking
Jedi?
about main saga for me personally, if we're talking about the main 9 movies, the weakest one is Attack of the Clones. If you're talking about everything that is released as far as like what is considered quote unquote canon, then I would say Solo is the weakest of all of them. Personal opinion.
See, I know a lot of people that hate Jedi. I know a lot of people that I thought the clones sucked. I didn't like it.
So
I like I like the darker Star Wars movies like Empire and Sith. I like the ones that don't have. You know what I'm saying? They're just more entertaining.
Where the bad guys won.
Well, yeah, because it wasn't. I don't know. It was.
I'm actually old enough to have been there for the opening weekend of the first Star Wars in '77. So that's by far my favorite. And then as far as the worst movie goes, Force Awakens
Really?
or Attack of the Clones.
I felt
Wow.
that the Force Awakens was just kind of a remake of Episode 4.
They were bringing a lot of people up to speed in that one. That's the reason I rate it so low. But yeah, and then I remember on the Muppet Show or whatever, whenever they did the Ewoks Christmas and all that shit. That was great whenever I was a kid, but it's fucking dreadful now. If you can get a hold of a copy, it's
Well, see,
The holiday special I did watch just to say that I watched it, and it
Yeah,
was like
well,
getting a
that's
root canal.
that's the one I'm talking about. That was actually a Muppet Show holiday special, but yeah. So they had Jim Henson and the the Spielberg creations. I don't know if it was I don't know if it was actually the special effects company yet at that point in time or not, but it might have been anyways.
What are you talking about? Industrial Light and Magic?
Yeah, Industrial Light Magic. I don't know if they were part of the holiday special.
No. Industrial. If you guys, the history of Industrial Light and Magic was actually born out of a very, very bad thing. So, in 1982, Spielberg was one of the producers on Twilight Zone, the movie, and there was an on-set accident that killed actor Vic Morrow and 2 children. And they were doing a very hairy stunt.
That was the helicopter scene, right?
That's on YouTube, believe it or not. It's kind of, I don't advise people watching it, but if you want to see it, it's if you just realize you can see 3 people get killed. But that kind of made SAG implement things to make things safer, and Industrial Light and Magic was basically born out of that death, out of that accident. And what had happened was John Landis was filming a segment, and he had a helicopter, and a pyrotechnic hit the back end of it. It spun out of control and decapitated Vic Morrow, one of the children, and crushed the other one. And the children were not child actors. They weren't in SAG. They weren't, they were just hired for the fact that they were Asians. And so that's kind of what. No, it was. It was a whole. He was rescuing them from a Vietnamese village. It was. He played a racist who goes into a bar and kind of like. It was called Time Out. I don't want to get into it, but anyway, it was because of that accident that made Industrial Light and Magic really take off, because now they can film things. I've asked Joe Alves, I said, when you're doing Jaws and Close Encounters, wouldn't it have been great if you had CGI? I said, no, not at all. He said, we had to be creative. We had to make things. We made Devil's Tower on a set. We redid it. We made a shark. I mean, CGI is cool, but I can't watch a lot of movies now with CGI because they look almost cartoony.
Not fair. That's 100% fair.
I think that's one of the things about the new Star Wars saga that you can actually sing the praises of, is the fact that they've figured out a way of blending the new CGI technologies with bringing back the practical effects and everything.
The models and stuff, right?
The models and the puppet creatures and the guys in costumes, playing aliens and all that. If you can sing no other praises to the sequel trilogy of Star Wars, you can at least say that that's one thing they did get right, is I think they have done a masterful blend of CGI and practical effect.
Yeah,
they did a really good job with that.
And just real quickly, just throw my 2 cents in to wrap up everything on that. Worst one for me, I think, I have to agree, is definitely going to be Attack of the Clones. Because, I mean, every Star Wars movie, in my opinion, yes, it has its ups and yes, it has its downs. And yeah, the latest trilogy got shat on pretty bad, but I personally enjoyed it for all of its flaws. So looking at it at the whole, Attack of the Clones was just a hard watch.
I think Attack of the Clones, like if I were to make a personal assessment, I think Attack of the Clones would have been best served if you would have taken half of Phantom Menace, condensed it down, and then took half of Attack of the Clones, condensed it down, and combined it together, and made it
with you on
one
that.
movie. I think if you took the best parts of both those movies and combined it into one movie, it would have been a lot better film than the 2 individual films that wound up being. I mean, I don't have a problem with it, Phantom Menace, but I think Phantom Menace would have been stronger if you would have taken out some of the Senate bullshit that nobody really cared about or got. It didn't really further the story. And then, of course, you cut out 3/4 of fucking clones and just put it in there to show that Anakin's growing into what he becomes in Revenge of the Sith.
So then the 3rd episode of that trilogy would have to become a different movie. And so would that be like following...
It'd be Rogue One.
As he goes through his trials?
Yes.
I mean, because they all have to be... So you have to follow Darth doing his trials, going on to the different planet. He wipes out not just the sand people, but he wipes out actually 3 other populations of indigenous species on different planets. That's part of his trials that the Emperor puts him through. If you read all of the books, it's so if they were to do that on the last movie, that would make the whole that'd be the best movie of all fucking time, probably.
Well, that's exactly it. I would have made Attack of the Clones and Phantom Menace episode 1. Just combined together and made it episode 1. I would have made Revenge of the Sith episode 2, and episode 3 would have been like the Rise of the Empire, the finishing of Order 66. I really would have extended that out. How the Empire really grabbed control of the galaxy.
Right.
You know, I was going to say that you would have 1 and 2 together as the first episode, something of what you get with the animated shows of Attack of the Clones as its own movie, and then keep Revenge of the Sith as is. But I like your idea way more than that. Like, way more. You put mine right out of the water.
Because there's actually on the planet, whenever Obi-Wan and Anakin have that sword fight, there's an indigenous species there that's kind of like the same creatures from
Tatooine.
Tatooine.
No, not Tatooine. From that movie that they did where the bugs come from outer space. And it was like
Starship Trooper?
Yes. Bugs like from Starship Trooper, except for they were able to survive on this lava planet. And Anakin comes back later as Darth and fucking wipes everything up that's on that planet. That's like part of the series of books around all that shit. And then he takes out a whole other planet of humanoids, and then there's taking out the rest of the Jedi as part of Order 66. Like there's a whole series based on that shit.
Well,
and so, yeah, that would be just so awesome to see all that be the crossover, and then you do Rise of Skywalker and Return of the Force.
Well, what I think is ironic, we all answered the question of what we think is the weakest Star Wars movie of the current canon and sagas. I think it's ironic that the one movie that was not mentioned by anybody, which should prove a point, is the one that took the most flack in the sequel trilogy, and that's Last Jedi.
No,
it wasn't that bad.
The Last Jedi was good.
I didn't hate Last Jedi.
Yeah,
that's the point I'm making.
There were parts of it that I hated, but I personally was thrilled with that movie. I enjoyed it immensely.
I was just pointing out, like, with as much hate and flack that movie took from release to current, it's ironic that we just sat here unabashedly and decided that Solo and Attack of the Clones, for the most part, is the weakest of the Star Wars movies, but not one mention, and even Force Awakens, but not one mention of Last Jedi. That's interesting to me.
Yeah. Well, and if you look at some of the older fans, because I don't know if anybody who's on right now is Steve. I know you're younger than me, Chris. I'm pretty sure you are.
I'm younger, not by much. Not
by
much, but I'm younger.
But
I'm younger. I'm the youngest.
You're the youngest. Okay, cool.
Damn right.
But if you look at people who are like, 40 plus, a lot of times Return of the Jedi gets mentioned as being the weakest one, because that was it was great while we watched it, and then whenever
we were kids,
yeah,
that's why we loved it. We were a little kid, kids.
As a lot of times, you look back at something that you like as a kid, and you're like, oh, that was kid shit. But it was actually a good movie. Outside of the Ewoks, they could have done, like, if they had today's special effects, it could have been maybe a little bit cooler, do a live action with some CGI maybe, but outside of, a lot of older people would think Return is the weakest one, but I think Attack of the Clones for sure.
I've been.
Sorry, good.
I forgot what I was going to say. Okay.
Well, while he's thinking about it, I wanted to incorporate something to this show, because we're about to hit the 2-hour mark. Just to let you know.
Awesome.
When I closed down Breaking the Fourth Wall for a while, and I started up a different podcast called Realm of the Mist Podcast, and we would still bitch about movies and stuff like that. We ended the show in a certain segment, and I think the segment might be good for Surviving the Storm, because I think it would fit in with, like, giving people something to think about when the show's over. And what it was is, at the end of the show, we would always choose the movie of the week, in which case we would recommend, each of us would come up with a movie and recommend it for people to check out for that week, or whatever. And I don't know, I wanted to propose it to you guys. Maybe we should incorporate that to Surviving the Storm, to give people something to watch while they're waiting for us to come back on. What do you guys think?
I would advise binge watching I would advise binge watching a TV show.
Well, we could do
But
TV
yeah,
shows or whatever, but like just give our personal recommendations. Go check this out, and maybe we'll talk about it next week, or something.
I watched a very funny movie the other night. And have either of you seen a movie with Rob Schneider called Big Stan?
No.
I can't say I have.
No, I haven't.
I laughed very hard at this movie. Big Stan came out in 2007. I don't know how I missed it. It's about a sleazy developer who's going to go to prison in 6 months, and he's worried about getting raped. So he hires David Carradine to live at his house to teach him how to be a badass. And then he goes to prison. It's called Big Stan, like Stanley Big Stan.
Didn't they do something similar with that? With like, I want to say Will Ferrell or no, the skinny, the real skinny kid, the real skinny kid from fucking Z Nation. The big nosed, real skinny kid. I can't think of his. He was also he was the new guy. He was part of road trip movies.
They could have. I don't know. They had to teach him. He's terrified of getting raped in prison, so he actually hires David Carradine, who's like this chain-smoking martial arts master, and teaches him all this cool stuff. And he goes into prison and ends up being like the baddest dude in there. But the dynamics is funny, and there's a really significant story when he gets to prison. But it's just really, really funny. I mean, Rob Schneider's taking karate with little kids originally, and he's like thinking about how to toughen up and all that. And it's a funny movie. It was very, and it's funny because, like I said, it came out in 2007, and I'm looking at the cast: Henry Gibson, Carradine. There's a lot of people who are dead that are in it. But if you just want to laugh, a really good laugh, that's a good one.
If we're doing the recommendations now, I'll throw out my wife and I just finished watching it, so might as well throw it out there. The Shield.
Oh yeah,
The Shield is good. Yeah, very good.
Yeah, I remember you talking about that the other night.
So I would highly recommend, if you want something to binge for the week, sit down and watch The Shield. Great show.
All right, so we got Big Stan and we got The Shield. What you got, man?
You need to give me a minute because I'm going to throw out something weird and I need to figure out what the hell I'm going to say, so you go first.
Okay. So I would highly suggest to everybody that you watch on What's Your Effin' Binge. Our top-rated series of all time is Peaky Blinders. We consider that to be the greatest binge-watching series. That along with The Office.
So I mean, for me, it's I'm a weird person. I watch weird stuff. This isn't anything new. Chris has known me long enough. He knows this.
Yeah, I was about to say, in other news, water that's wet.
Exactly. So, I mean, for me, I've been jumping between live action shows and anime for the last 2 weeks. I rewatched My Hero Academia recently, and it still holds up fantastically. I'm waiting for the rest of that season to drop. But another thing that I actually recently repicked up, Stargate SG-1.
The original,
Okay.
not the spin-offs, not Atlantis, not the other one, the original SG-1.
I'm starting with the original back up again. I'll definitely go to Atlantis eventually, because Atlantis was good too. Atlantis was very good. I will not touch Universe because I know that's a dumpster fire in and of itself.
I actually visited the set of the original Stargate film back in 1993.
Oh, jeez.
I didn't even know what they were filming, and then I was invited out to the set, and it was filmed outside of Yuma, Arizona. And incidentally, that's also the same area where they filmed the Sarlacc thing in Jedi. That was Jabba's. Yuma is a town called Yuma, Arizona, and you could see the big round thing off on the road, you know. But yeah, I never saw the movie, but I'll check it out though. It sounds good. You know.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's a great science fiction film and TV show. It's different from Star Trek and Star Wars, and that's part of the reason why I think it did as well as it did.
You know, it's funny because you just brought into my mind something that I could propose to you guys. Of course, I hear great things about SG-1 all the time. And, of course, we had the discussion last time, Chris and I did, about the rebooted Battlestar Galactica. And in my personal opinion, I think it's better than the original, although the original is still a classic in its own right. But, you know, two series I'm thinking of that nobody ever mentions. Science fiction TV series that nobody ever seems to mention. I want to get your guys' opinions on them. Farscape and Babylon 5.
Never watched Farscape. I've heard of it. I never actually sat down to watch it. I've tried to watch Babylon 5. It does nothing for me.
Or thinking about it now, Gene Roddenberry's Andromeda with Kevin Sorbo. I'll throw that one in there too. Disappointed. Sorry, I that's the only thing I ever think of when I think of Kevin Sorbo.
Would you classify some shows like Knight Rider to be a science fiction show?
So that is actually a science fiction show. It's listed in IMDb as science fiction and action.
And we had great shows back then. The A-Team. Oh, dude, we had great shows.
Yeah, on the What's Your Effin' Binge fan group page, we have a poll going on right now on voting for a show from the 70s, 80s, or 90s for us to retrograde because we basically reviewed TV series. And so we have Cheers as a front runner, MASH.
Ooh, MASH is definitely a.
We also have Friends as a front runner, Sanford and Son as a front runner, and then Saved by the Bell and Charmed. Those are the series that are getting. Oh, and Charmed and Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It's got some mentions in there too, but yeah, those are
Night Court.
Night Court.
Now we're talking. There we go.
With John Larroquette and fucking Anderson and all those guys. Marky Post. She was a babe back in those days. She was a fucking smoke show, dude.
God, now you have me thinking about it. Welcome back, Cotter.
Well, you know what's funny is did you, Chris, did I send you Suze Lanier Brannett from The Hills Have Eyes?
No. You were supposed to, but you haven't yet.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'll send you guys her contact info. Before she did The Hills Have Eyes, she was on Welcome Back Cotter's buddy, John Travolta's girlfriend.
Nice.
That's what's up.
Yeah, and then I thought for sure, I lose track of stuff. Now I sent you Richard Karn, right, from Home Improvement.
You did. That was when I had a co-host who no longer is with the company.
Okay,
he did the interview, so I never got a chance to actually sit down and talk to him.
Richard Karn. When I first met Richard Karn, we had a phone call. So we got on a phone call and we talked. And I'm telling Richard Karn, I was booking on a show in New York, just like I said, booking an interview. And we had a great conversation. He said, "You haven't asked me about Home Improvement." I said, "Yeah, I never watched it." I said, "What?" I never watched it. He said, "Why not?" I said, No. I gave him my reason. I said, "Look, I'm aware of who you are. I'm aware of the show. It was on Friday night, and I was in high school. Do you honestly think?" He said, "No, that's cool." He said, "So I'll never ask you a fan question." So so he loved that. So I've never, I'm aware, and Karn's a really nice guy. Another friend of mine is a guy named Stan Livingston who was on My Three Sons. He was Chip Douglas. And Stan was on that thing for 13 years, but there's shows that I miss, like I said, that I wish they could make nowadays, but anything Norman Lear made probably be shut down in a minute. I never watched Friends.
You're not missing anything.
I hate to agree, but yeah.
It's definitely does not hold up well. That's for damn.
No, it does not.
Do you guys remember the show V?
Yeah, I remember V.
With Roddy Piper, yeah.
Yeah, that was cool. No.
Oh, the television show. I'm thinking of
yeah. Well, yeah, yeah.
That's all right. I was just thinking fucking Tales from the Dark Side.
That was a great show. That was the intro was creepy. It was great. I remember the Amazing Stories was a great show too.
Friday the 13th, the series, and Nightmare on Elm Street, the series.
I never saw Nightmare on Elm Street. Saw Friday the 13th, and it was funny because no Jason Voorhees, just some hunting down, creepy stuff.
No. The TV series had nothing to do with Jason at all.
No,
not
not
at all.
Yeah.
But it was them hunting down stuff. My friend C.J. Graham was in Friday the 13th Part 6. He was Jason Voorhees in that film.
Right.
And he's talking about how they might make another one. And he when he was telling me how they're doing it, I'm like, that's ingenious because it's something they've never done before. But no, there's a lot of good shows. I wish, like, people in their 20s could go back and revisit some of these shows. They're really great.
Well, as a person in his 20s,
Uh-huh.
A
You
lot of
fucking
shows
young
that,
fuck.
Oh, kiss my ass, old man. A lot of the shows that Chris just rambled off in his poll, the first two right off the bat, MASH and Cheers. I watched that with my father when I was growing up, and even Home Improvement. When I heard that you guys interviewed Richard Kahn, part of me just freaking died on the floor. I would kill for that opportunity.
Also, I'll send you his info if you want to interview him.
Well,
send it to me, and maybe I'll be nice and let UA actually do the interview on Breaking the Fourth Wall.
I mean, you both. Rich is a real nice guy. I sent him to an autograph show in Florida prior to all everything going haywire. But no, he's really nice. And my friend Oliver Robbins, who's in Poltergeist, I've been sending him to stuff. He played the son, and he's UA. It's these people I've met in my life. That's all it is, But they're all unique in their own little way. They've done cool stuff. But yeah, no, the TV shows. I was a huge Twilight Zone fan. Didn't get into Outer Limit that much. There was a show called Dark Shadows back in the day.
Oh, Dark Shadows is awesome.
And I used to. The head cast of that show, I knew them, and that's Land Lost. I know all Land Lost people, and I'd send them out to interviews, and some of them were really embracing of it. Some of them just hated.
You know what I want a current reboot of? Buck Rogers.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe.
I guess so.
I think they can give them modern times to it. I just want to beep. What's up, Buck? Like, give me the little robot back. I forget his name.
I want to see a Twinkie.
Twinkie, thank you. The Twinkie.
Do you guys remember a TV show called BJ and the Bear?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a cool show. No, I want to see a remake of $6 Million Man.
I would like to see a reboot or just or maybe they just pick it up again of Quantum Leap.
Quantum Leap was a great show.
I hear that one all the time.
They really do need to give a proper ending.
They didn't give us one.
Yeah, they really need to give it a proper ending.
Yeah, do a 7-episode little mini ending or a mini series of it and wrap it up right. Fuck yeah.
Well, I've got a conversation for next show. I got one that we could all think about. Give us a couple days or a week, whenever we decide to do the next show. Something to think about. The return of Saturday morning cartoons.
Hey, that kind of sounds like a topic that we're going to run on my new podcast once Keith gets his voice back. Actually, Chris, if you don't mind, can I just plug that podcast for you real quickly?
Oh God, if you must. Actually, it's not my show. This isn't Realm of the Mist. Just because I'm recording it. This is Chris's show. You got to talk to him.
You're good, bro. Go ahead, run with it.
It'll be a 30-second plug, and then I drop it.
Yeah, man, you're cool.
So the concept of it is it's called East versus West. We're taking concepts that were huge in the East in Japan and China, like, the movies featuring kaiju, anime, for Keith, Kamen Rider, and Super Sentai, and how it compared to out here in the West in America, in Canada, and England, so on and so forth. So when I hear you mention that just now, that's something that I wanted to do was, okay, how does Saturday morning cartoons compare from Japan over here in America when you compare anime to American-made cartoons to see how they would differ?
I think it just depends on the cartoon.
Exactly.
They're wildly different, yeah.
Because I mean, you can't compare, like, I know it's not an actual Japanese. It's from Japanese anime, but I mean, like, you can't compare Pokemon, for example, to gummy bears.
No,
they're two completely different style.
Very true. Very true.
You can't even compare Super Friends to whatever. I mean,
right?
Yeah.
So it really depends on how you narrow that down. But
is there a classic '80s Saturday morning version of Japanese cartoons? I mean, is that
Tranzor Z?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Tranzor Z.
Tranzor Z. That would be the only comparison.
Wasn't Voltron?
I think Voltron was late '80s, and you also had Star Blazers.
Okay.
You have
Robotech.
You have Thundercats.
Was Thundercats an anime?
Japanese. That wasn't Japanese.
No, it wasn't Japanese. I take that back.
What was
Transformers.
Soberhawks, and what was the one? Do you guys remember a show called Lone Star?
Sounds familiar.
I remember Lone Star.
Yeah, somebody's. Yeah, I didn't know. It's Chris in Philly. I talked to Jack O'Halloran yesterday, and he asked about you. And said,
I'm living well, Jack. If you're watching this video, or if you watch this video at any point,
he probably is.
Nice.
He's
Jack, I'm doing great, and of course, anytime you want to come back on, I promise I won't kneel before Zod.
Yeah, Chris.
I had to make the Superman reference. I'm sorry. Don't have me whacked.
No.
I'm kidding.
You one of my closest friends is a guy named Jack O'Halloran. He was in Superman 1 and 2. He was he was Zod's henchman, Non.
Yes, I'm very familiar with the actor, and I'm very familiar with the movies, so I know exactly who you're talking about.
His story is about, he's a great guy.
Good guy.
His story is about his disdain for Christopher Reeve. He will tell you blatantly how he didn't like Christopher Reeve when they're making
which might
Christopher
cause a little bit of issue because I'm actually a huge Christopher Reeve fan. I did a research project on him in high school.
He's not. No, here's. He'll tell you. Here's what it is. I put Jack on so many of these, and he just talks. He's got a very interesting story besides the Superman films and Dragnet and so on. King Kong. They took Christopher Reeve, who was basically just a stage actor. He went to Juilliard, really amazing guy, but they dropped him. You gotta take this into consideration. They made him beef up. They drop him. They make him the lead of a movie where you're with Marlon Brando. You look at the cast of original Superman; it's insane.
Terrence Stamp,
My friend Jeff East played the Clark Kent character in the original Superman, and Jeff said that Christopher Reeve wanted to play his part as a teenager, and they're like, no, you're too old. And so they dubbed Jeff's voice with Christopher's voice. That's not Jeff's voice, it's Christopher's voice. But he looked like him at the time. But Christopher Reeve believed a lot of his own press, and there was a disagreement he had with Jack, and Jack almost knocked his lights out one time. And there was a very, and he when Richard Donner got fired, they brought in Richard Lester. He thought Reeves would step up to the plate and be like, "No, you can't." But he will tell you that there's only one person who can play Superman. That was Reeves, and he said, "Look, they became friends, but at the time they were not friends."
Yeah.
And something interesting when they were doing Superman 2. Terrence Stamp used to bitch out Sarah Douglas and Jack all the time, like Zod. He'd be in his character. Where the hell are you? And, he would be really menacing. And me and Jack did an autograph show and at the Hollywood show over by the West in L.A. And Jack would have people coming up and they'd do a picture, buy an autograph. They said, you scared the hell out of me when I was a kid, man, but I was fascinated by you. And Jack said, well, if you watch the movie now as an adult, you realize he's just big and menacing. But it's really Terrence Stamp that's a scary one.
Oh,
he's
absolutely.
Not physically imposing, but he's a megalomaniac. He's vicious, and that's it's funny how
it's funny because the best way I would describe Nod is exactly, if you guys remember from earlier when I was talking about the Baby Stewie wrestling gimmick. That's really what Nod was. Nod was big and scary. He was a big, buff creature. Yeah. He had a childlike innocence to him.
Yes,
he really did. Nod was pretty much a character. Nod was very much a character who had like innate curiosity. Like the first scene I always think of when I think of Nod is him trying to figure out how to burn the charred snake. Like when he watched when he watched the girl cook it, and then they all walk away, and he picks up the thing, and he's just like, and he couldn't get it to fully work the way she did. But he was just there was a childlike comedy to it. Like, how do you do that? You know what I mean?
Well, that's what it was. He was learning, and the backstory Jack told me was that Non was a scientist who had a lobotomy. And that's why he was the muscle and all that. But he liked, there was an old Jackie Cooper movie, and he played a mute called Jigo, and that's why Jack wanted to play a mute. And Jack has played a mute in that, and he was the villain and the hero and the terror. And I swear to God, this one guy walked up and said, "Oh my God, I didn't know you could speak." He said, "Of course I could speak." He said, "Well, I've never heard you talk." He said, "Well, you've seen my other movies, haven't you?" He's really... These Superman movies, he said that they have been talking for years. He said it probably won't happen in his lifetime. But as you guys know, going back to Star Wars, how they could CGI things, he said they were talking about doing a full Christopher Reeve Superman movie.
Wow.
Oh, jeez.
No way.
I
think it would bomb.
I don't think that's a good idea. Not because I think it would bomb. I think it's kind of along the lines of, the Tarkin syndrome with Rogue One. Although Rogue One was a phenomenal movie, I don't think it's a good idea to bring back dead actors. I don't, because I think even if you do it respectfully, it just feels wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely does. Doing a post-mortems movie of somebody where they start.
Well, Jack doesn't like. Jack doesn't like the new Superman movies.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can understand that.
Here's where my problem with that would come into play. I love the original Superman movies. I grew up on those. They were a big part of me in that age. I do not feel like Christopher Reeve's Superman would work in today's society.
I don't know.
Probably not.
I don't know. I hate to disagree with you, but I think if you were to play, especially like when you look at to use an example, the CW Arrowverse going on right now, where they really been playing into the multiverse scenarios. I think there is a world where the Christopher Reeve style Superman and the Adam West style Batman could exist in this franchise and be accepted. I just think you have to put it as one of the multiverse Earths.
Well, here, you know what? I'll use your exact example. Going back to the Crisis on Infinite Earth crossover that they did at the end of last year, they brought back Brandon Routh's version of Superman from when he did Superman Returns. And they decided to make him essentially transition from Christopher Reeve's version of it to his version, and then in the crossover, they decided to have him do his rendition of the Kingdom Come Superman.
Right.
Now, if you were to tell me that you wanted to introduce Christopher Reeve's version of Superman as a crossover version of it, do I feel like that would work as like a brief clip it? Absolutely. I think that it would make great on the nostalgia factor. I think that it would definitely bring a lot to the table. But I don't feel like you could do it for longer than, like, say, a few moments.
I guess. I have to go, fellas. Listen, this was fun. I don't normally do these, but this was great. Thank you all very
Steven,
much.
Thanks for your time, man. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
For coming on, man.
No, this was cool. I don't really do these things, that often, but be well, and we used to say be careful out there, but I guess be careful in there, And,
stay home.
and I need to do a couple PSAs. If you are not a handyman, don't screw around with electrical items, and don't try to do something out of norm because I'm worried. You know what I'm worried about? I'm worried about like domestic accidents right now. I'm worried about someone like, you know what? I ought to just rewire the whole. You know, I'm worried about that sort of thing.
People getting bored and just fucking with electro wires.
That's fair, actually. I completely agree.
You can't tell me. You guys can't tell me that somewhere right now somebody is trying to hang a television like on the ceiling or something. People are redecorating stuff. People are thinking of things that normally they shouldn't be thinking about. And I guarantee someone's like, you know, we could take this big screen and just be careful out there, guys. Home accidents. It's where a lot of the bad things happen.
Oh, don't worry, honey. Don't worry, honey. I'm only hooking your vibrator up to a 220 line so that way you get the extra power out of it.
You see that?
This kickstand doesn't mean anything.
No, you're not wrong though. People do stupid things when they get bored. So yeah, guys, be conscientious of what you do.
Absolutely.
All right, fellas, be well.
Thank you very
Absolutely.
much.
Yep.
And I think
Cheers, Steven.
that's our cue to end this one too.
Yeah, that's a good natural wrap up. Thanks a lot, guys.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you. Of course, you can find everybody at their respective things. You can just check out the groups that you've seen this video on. And, of course, we'll be releasing the replays for you guys on YouTube and on Anchor and all the likes. So, of course, like, share, comment, subscribe. And finally, last but not least, go wash your fucking hands.
Next week, we can learn colors and shapes.
Yay! but can the round peg go into the square blue hole?
Right.
Hey, if you try hard enough.
Let me go get that 220 vibrator. I'm sure I can make it. Have a good one, guys.